Hello, testing? Yeah, it's on. I want to call this meeting to order. Can you please call the roll call?
Marsanti.
Here.
Burke.
Present.
Couch.
Here.
Mayo.
Present.
Corbin.
Here. Okay. We are now going to adjourn to a public employee performance evaluation, and then we'll report out a closed session. And I don't know whether there's a misunderstanding, but a regular meeting starts at 7. But if you're here, you're certainly welcome early.
There's actually a scoping meeting that's going to happen that started
6 to 7
concurrently with this, but it has nothing to do with the board meeting.
Oh, okay. God, yeah, I thought you loved us. And oh no, you're wearing your hair, and we'll get out of your way.
I did want to show creation at Harrison Park.
Scoping meeting. Thank you all for coming to the scoping.
Right, and we appreciate your community service. And with that, I'm going to close to closed session. I'd like to call the board meeting back into session from our special meeting at 6 o'clock on personnel matters. I want to report out of the closed session that our general manager received a favorable evaluation. With that, we'll begin a second call to order and a second roll call for the start of the meeting.
Director Marsanti.
Here.
Director Burke.
Present.
Director Couch.
Here.
Director Mayo.
Here.
President Corbin.
Here. And can Mary Burke please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is additions to the agenda, and I wanted to call do any board members have additions? Do staff have additions?
President Corbin, no additions to the agenda.
And does anyone from the audience? Okay. Then I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Can we have roll call?
Director Burke.
Barsanti first. Oh.
Director Marsanti. Director Couch.
Yes.
Director Mayo.
Yes.
President Corbin.
Here. The next items are public hearings. And B1 is to conduct a public hearing for the annual levy of assessments fiscal year 2018-2020 for Major B Maintenance Assessment District renewal for parks, open space, and recreational facilities. The board is to consider adopting Resolution 2019-13, approving the annual engineer's report on those costs. And I just want to say this is one of the more important actions we do in the year, even though it's pretty much the numbers. And when McKinleyville put this to the vote of the people, they responded very favorably to it, and it changed the whole character of the district from merely being water and sewer to broadening our horizons. With that, I will want to know whether there's a brief staff presentation before I open it up to the public.
I got you all that brief, so I will make it quick. So as you should be or are aware, in 1992, the district created a Measure B assessment, which started out actually the financing for the buildings on this site and also for Hiller Sports site. We then went back to 2011, and the ratepayers of McKinleyville resoundingly voted in support of another 20-year Measure B, and we used as it says in the engineer's report, we are funding the debt on the teen center and also using it for maintenance. So staff's recommendation at this time, and this is quasi-judicial, so we have to follow the procedure. But anyway, staff recommends that the board follow the below process related to the proposed annual levy of the assessment for fiscal year 2019-20 of the Measure B Assessment District. Number one would be to open the public hearing, listen to staff comments and recommendations to the board, open the public testimony and consider any public input and written protests. At that point, then we close the public hearing, and then staff would recommend that the board adopt resolutions 2019-13 and 2019-14. Resolution 2019-13 is approving the annual engineer's report, fiscal year 2019-20, McKinleyville Community Services District, Measure B Maintenance Assessment District, renew of parks, open space, and recreational facilities, including the assessment diagram connected herein as attachment 1. And then resolution 2019-14, ordering the levy and collection of the assessments within the McKinleyville Community Services District, Measure B Maintenance Assessment District, renewal for parks, open space, and recreation facilities for fiscal year 2019-20, which is attachment number 2.
Okay. Just for clarification of the record, the staff comments are deemed part of the public hearing. And with that, I'll open it up to the public for testimony and consider any public input and written protests. Going once, twice, 3 times? Okay, hearing no public input, I will bring it back for consideration adopting Resolution 2019-13 and 20-19-14.
Subject to board comments, I move to adopt Resolution 2019-13 and 2019-2020.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there any further board discussion?
I had one thing just on page 8 where there's the fiscal analysis. Down about the middle of it, it says, "It begin construction of the new Teen Community Center." I would like to strike that. So it doesn't come back next year again.
Right.
Oops.
That's okay.
Thank you for a good catch, David.
Yes, very good.
And I would just, I would just like to comment that it's great that we have Measure B in place and that we have the support of the community to continue offering the recreation programs that we do. And so I'm really happy to be able to be here to be able to approve this.
Okay. Any further board comment? Okay. Can we please have a roll call vote?
Marsanti,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Couch,
Yes.
Mayo,
Yes.
Corbin.
Yes. The next item is public comment and written communications. Does anyone from the public wish to make a comment or written communication? It has to be for items not on the agenda. And if it's complex, we request those be in letters. And Mr. James Henry is flashing my attention.
I promised that I would bring our new employee for introduction with you guys.
Oh, good.
And so he is here this time. It's amazing when you tell him to show up, he shows up, but when you don't tell him to show up, he doesn't show up. So, my fault that he wasn't here last time. I would like to introduce you to our new parks maintenance guy. Morgan, you can stand up. They may call you and ask you questions, so be prepared. I normally write a little thing about the new employee, and then I have them write something. So I'll read what I wrote and then what he wrote afterwards.
All right.
So this is Morgan, 23-year-old. You read it, didn't you? 23-year-old, born in Southern California. He moved to Humboldt County in 2013, where he recently was married. While in Humboldt, worked for county parks and completed a bachelor's degree in wildlife biology from HSU. He's happy to become part of the MCSD team and look forward to working more in the parks and open space McKinleyville has to offer. I asked Morgan what he would like me to say tonight. He said, the say James is amazing, and the reason I came to work for MCSD. So thank you, Morgan, for that. Maybe the last part was a lie. But I'm going to introduce you guys to Morgan. He's been a great worker. He's been he's got the swap crew on Saturdays. He's the Wednesday through Sunday shift. Been doing a really good job. So I wanted you guys to see the face in case you would tackle him. He's out in the park still in garbage cans. And if you have questions for him, be more than happy to answer questions.
You want to step up to the podium? Come on.
If they ask you about that last part, you wrote that.
But make him you should buy a cup of coffee for that.
Yeah.
Morgan, welcome. Thanks. So I was wondering, Morgan, on page 3 of the employee policy manual on conduct, what's your opinion? Yes.
Welcome to the team. Glad
Yeah.
you joined us.
Anything else?
Well, I've been quoting you to actually everyone I've talked to recently, because we had this grass seeding and dirt filling in at Hiller Park a couple of weeks ago, and afterwards we were all chatting, and you were saying something to the fact that since you've come to work here, you've learned that soccer moms are nothing compared to little league dads. I think there's great wisdom there.
Anyway, welcome aboard.
Yes, you're very, very welcome. Thank you. And thank you, James. Anyone else from the public want to comment? Okay. We're going to move on to the consent calendar.
John, could I?
Yes.
If somebody would give us just a little brief, you had a little get-together information.
It's item 1.
Huh?
It's
Oh,
item
we already
1.
have it on? Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Apparently not, Dennis. Okay, consent calendar. Does anyone on the board want to have an item taken off? Does anyone from staff have an item they want taken off? Does anyone from the public have an item they want taken off the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I would like a motion to approve.
Move the approval of the consent calendar.
A second?
Okay,
Yeah.
could you please take the roll when you're ready?
Director Barsanti.
Yes.
Director Burke.
I
Director Couch.
Aye.
Director Mayo. Yes. President Corcoran.
Yes. Consent calendar is approved. So now we're on E, continue to do business. And E1 is the first item. And that's gather public input for the expansion and improvement of Pearson Park campus to be included in the district's application for the statewide park development and community revitalization program. And I'll call the general manager.
Actually, that's Leslie Frisbee's item, I think. Or did you put my name on there?
No, my name's on there.
Okay.
Well, you can delegate as you see fit.
So first I want to apologize because the way my staff note reads is that this is going to be the opportunity for public input, which it can, like it still has that opportunity, it just is not the process that we just went through, but the public's had an opportunity to go through. So if there are members of the public here who want to give public input separate and you want to answer the questions that I just asked people to answer prior to, I will gladly email all of those questions to you, and you can email responses to me, and I apologize for that misunderstanding. So, the grant, the statewide park development community and community revitalization program grant application requires 5 public meetings for all of their projects. This is the first of 5 meetings that we just conducted. It was about 10 to 12 people who provided input on the additional park features they want to see at the park to enhance their enjoyment, changes or additions to the landscaping, and then their dream playground. So I asked folks to draw their dream playground and also provide information as to what's their favorite parts of a playground, what do their children love to do at a playground, and what are some elements, their favorite elements from other playgrounds that don't exist at Pearson Park. So that's the kind of input we gather tonight. The nature of the meetings will go from very broad, big audacious dreaming, and then narrow down to specifics, what will be the project by the end of the public meeting process. So this was the first of 5. The second one will be on May 18th. It'll be a workshop at the Teen Center from 10 to 12. There are pamphlets like this on the table back there that have the whole schedule of meetings. There will be a booth at Pony Express Days where input will be gathered. There will be a table at least one music in the park, but I suspect since I will be at lots of those, I will have information and gathered input at most of the ones that I attend. And then there'll be a final meeting on July 9th where we really sort of paint the complete picture of what the project will look like and all the pieces in it. It's an ambitious project, and I'm excited to get to apply.
Board Member Mayo.
So the Pony Express booth is going to count as a meet?
Yes.
Okay. I'm wondering why our strategic finance planning meeting on parks previously, how come we didn't count that as one? Could it be counted?
It could be counted as one.
Because
The meetings have to happen between June 5th of 2018 and August.
And I think that falls in the...
I don't know, didn't we talk
It was
about
in
that? I think it
November.
was close. It was, oh, so it
It wasn't a closed meeting, it was open to.
No, it was open. I thought the time...
I didn't even think about it, so it will
we
qualify,
will do
yes.
Cool. Okay.
Even though we didn't specifically talk about this project, so I'll have to
Well,
see how that works.
we actually did. I mean, there was other parameters, but we did talk about, this. And so anyway, you
Yeah.
pursue that
Thank
if you
you.
will.
I didn't think about it.
Okay, then let me play back the procedure. We'll get more comments and we open it up to the public here. Okay. So any other board comments? Okay, I'd like to, Board Member Berg.
Just quickly to say that I'm really glad that through identifying the needs in this campus that we're in a great position to be able to put an application like this forward, and take the opportunity to thank staff for all the work that goes into preparing both the public meeting side and then developing applications for a proposal like this. It takes a lot of time, so thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Board General Manager Orsini.
Yeah, I just would like to say that the amount of work that's going to be necessary to to make this grant application competitive is not surmountable, but it's going to be significant, and this is a very audacious ask, and this is a very audacious ask, and it goes from everything as bringing the skate park to fruition to enough solar to be able to offset the cost of all these facilities, and things that are just as important, and will ease our revenue issues, and that's replacing floors and updating walls, and maybe expanding the size of this facility and things like that. So there's quite a bit. The dynamics of this grant are significant, and I think that it's going to put us in a very good place to be able to qualify very highly for this grant.
With that, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Okay. I guess this qualifies as public comment, even though it's... Yeah. Okay. So, then that concludes this item. Okay.
Thank you.
So the next item is E2, consider adoption of resolution 2019-12, recognizing and honoring and commending Leslie Frisbee for 15 years of service. I didn't know it had been that long, Leslie. Want to thank you for your efforts, and I'll open it up for the board for comment.
Well, subject to all the fun and games, I'm going to move the item.
I'll happily second that and comment that I've known Leslie for quite some time, and I remember having conversations before being in my board position of the rewarding and also challenging, challenging in a personal growth sense of working for the district, and that I'm really pleased that you've been able to be with the district for so long. I look forward to seeing you here longer, and continually impressed by the work that you do and the vision that you bring to the district. Thank you for your service.
Do you want to step up to the microphone and say something? You can sit down to the microphone.
President College, could I read the resolution?
Well, I wanted to open it up for public comment and then have a motion for the resolution.
May I say something too?
Sure.
Leslie, I want to thank you. You have helped all the children in our area. You don't know how wonderful it's been to have all the opportunities that you have provided them to have lots of fun, and the seniors too. Thank you so much. You've just made our community really wonderful. Really appreciate all your efforts and hard work. I've seen how hard you worked all those years. Really, really appreciate it.
With that, we'll open it up to the public. Okay? Oh, please step up.
So I would personally like to thank Leslie. She has been a tremendous, is that better? She's been just wonderful to work with on the rack, in the park, all the things that we've done over the last 5 or 6 years. It's just been amazing. Thank you, Leslie. We really love having you as part of our community, supporting and doing everything you do.
Hi, I'm Kendra Day from the McKinleyville Senior Center. Leslie is our staff liaison with the district. She's been fantastic to work with. She is always cooperative. She's always clear. She's creative about solving problems. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you on behalf of the Senior Center for all you do. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'm Hillary, and Leslie is lovely, and you're so lucky to have her.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I just want to say in public work you don't often get a lot of compliments, so I'm glad on this occasion people came out to commend you for the really great job you've been doing. Oh.
I work with, I work for operations, but I get to see Leslie more or less on a daily basis, and her upbeat personality, and there's only been one time I've been able to make her mad. And I think it goes to show that she's very kind-hearted, and we're very lucky to have her working for the district.
All right. Okay, can we get a motion to approve the resolution?
I make a motion that we approve resolution E2. Is that what it is?
2019-12?
Yeah, I think that's the one.
We already moved and seconded.
Oh, yeah,
right?
we did. We remember we.
Yeah, we have, but I
apologize.
but I really think it's not okay to sit there. You got to get up and get in front of the mic. Because we embarrass everybody else, so you're not going to get out of it.
You have to wait till after Greg reads your resolution.
Are you going to give me 2 minutes? Well, I want to say thank you to everyone for your kind words. It has been a journey working for this organization. I started as a part-timer, and the average adult changes careers 7 times. This is what my father told me, and I believe everything my father says. So I was counting the number of jobs that I've had as an adult today, and I've had 10, but I've been here for 15 years. And and I'm only 42. Interesting that. Anyway, I love what I get to do most of the time. Sometimes it's really hard. I love who I get to work with. I have a lot of opportunities to practice new skills, and that is my favorite thing to do. So thank you for that opportunity, and here's to many more years. You're stuck with me. Thank you.
Yeah, can I read those?
So we probably ought to read the resolution, right?
Very good. So this is a resolution. Thank you. This is Resolution 2019-12, a resolution recognizing, honoring, and commending Leslie Frisbee for serving McKinleyville Community Services District for 15 continuous years. Whereas Leslie Frisbee, having faithfully served 15 continuous years as a full-time employee of the McKinleyville Community Services District from May 3rd, 2004 to May 3rd, 2019. Whereas throughout her years of service, Leslie continually demonstrates a commitment and dedication to the recreational needs of our community, and whereas Leslie lends her vast knowledge of recreation and programs to enhance and progress the MCSD Parks and Recreation Department, and whereas Leslie exhibits attributes that make her a valuable member of the MCSD team, and whereas Leslie's skill to plan, guide, manage a group or event to ensure the functional objectives are met effectively has provided significant value to all MCSD departments, and whereas Leslie has made significant improvements in all aspects of the Parks and Recreation Department as a Recreation Director, and whereas Leslie's leadership, the Parks and Recreation Department is evolving to meet the changing needs of the McKinleyville community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of McKinleyville Community Services District hereby confer upon Leslie Frisbee its highest commendation for the dedicated service she has performed for the district and the community, and further marks her historic accomplishment as a McKinleyville Community Services District employee for 15 years.
Okay. So David, do you have the maker and second clear?
Yes.
Okay, please take the roll.
Director Barzon?
Yes.
Burke?
Aye.
Couch?
Yes.
Mayo?
Yes.
Gordon?
Yes. Resolution carries, and thank you, Leslie. Yes.
Squeeze in here, guys. You got it, I'd like to take the photo.
Four cameras, Leslie. Very good. All right.
Thank you.
I'll pay you that.
Thank you.
Got one more picture last time.
Yay. My people. Yeah.
All right.
Not in this one, the next one.
Squeeze in, guys.
All right.
Jan, now everybody say bourbon.
Bourbon.
Yeah, we have to wait for Chris.
So, are we going to skip this next one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, next item is E3. Consider adopting of a resolution 2019-11, recognizing, honoring, and commending Christopher James for 15 years of service. We'll have one comment. We'll have the general manager read the resolution and the same procedures as last time. And we'll wait until board members back for motion making. So do board members comments?
President Carter, can I make a comment about Leslie first?
Okay.
So anyway, I wanted to say
the audience get up and
So Leslie, thank you very much. Your insights are in our conversations are very important to me, and your professional excellence are very reassuring and helpful, and I appreciate your empathy and your caringness for the people that you work with and that you work for the community, and you take that very seriously. And I think that you can do anything that you want if you set your mind to it. So thank you very much.
And Leslie, I want to say, when we have general manager candidates, they invariably go, whoa, you guys have a recreation program, a really extensive one. So it definitely is noticed and enriches the district. So. Okay, now we're to Christopher Jones, board comments. I'll make one if no one else will. But
I might have to recuse myself on that
right. Well, we have a way to deaden the mic over there.
Now?
Okay. Well, I just want to thank Christopher for working for us. You don't know how proud it makes you to be a board of directors that not only are we doing a good job as a district, but we're doing right by our employees, and they're doing right by us by staying so long. And that means we got to keep working on everything, but really means we're doing some things right. And so it's a real honor to be able to give 15-year awards, especially in today's society where people shift around an awful lot. And so your work's appreciated. And does the general manager want to say anything?
Well, I'll wait until we get like 3 or 4 agenda items done, and then I'll so, no, I just want Chris brings many unique attributes to the job. His mechanical skills, his sense of humor. I think that Chris is probably the only fellow that works in the operations department that has the cojones to mess with me and to practical joke me. So that just goes to the spirit that Chris brings to the job, and in his not only his excellence but also his stick-to-itiveness and the fact that you can count on Chris anytime to show up out on a job, no matter what the weather conditions are or what the job is that you ask him to do. He'll be there for you.
So,
go ahead.
I want to move the motion 2019-11, subject to the comment of the public, and just say that, I didn't think that this prison reform thing would work, but you proved it false, congratulations.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Do you want to come up to the microphone?
The roast?
It's more like a roast. We love you, brother.
I know. That's right. So I want to thank you guys for recognizing this. I mean, I wish I would have started this career like 10 years before I started when I was 27, but it's a great place to work. I mean, the skills you learn on the job are they're so vast, and you get so much experience throughout all kinds of stuff that it's a lifetime of stuff I've learned here, and it's amazing, actually. I
mean, I wish I would have started, like I said, 10 years ago, and I would have been James's boss, and bossing him around would be great. But no, it's been a pleasure, and hopefully I get another 25 years here. It's amazing.
And I hope I'm around.
Next item.
All right. Well, I'm sorry.
One last thing is, well, thank you for your service and thank you for bringing humor, as I understand, to the job. And practical jokes, I don't know what sort, I don't get to know that, but if when people take the opportunity to bring levity to your day-to-day operations, it just speaks highly of who you are as an individual. So thank you for your service and your humor. Thank you.
All right. Oh, James and then David.
Go ahead, David.
Well, I was just going to say down on this list here of the whereas, one of them, it says you've assisted in several projects, but one of them is manhole repairs, which is very near and dear to my heart because I work for an agency that has really leaky manholes. we have big problems with inflow and infiltration, and the fact that you guys keep a tight collection system really is a wonderful thing. So I want to compliment you and everybody else on that.
All right, James.
I want to mention what you said we do offer to trade Chris out for other boys and men. So I have read that to him many times. And he's offered to go, which is weird. But no, Chris does an amazing, and my mic's way loud. Chris does an amazing job for us, and we can sit and talk about that all day. But one of Chris's assets that I will call an asset is his humor. He's that guy that you're having a great day and it's just nothing but storming all over you. He's the guy that's going to come in and put a smile on your face. When Kyle makes Leslie mad, Chris gets her happy, and this thing trades off. So where Leslie gets mad, Kyle makes people mad, Chris makes people happy, and it works. We just, as a family, we work, and without this piece, it doesn't work, if that makes sense at all. But he's a great team member. He'll step up and do anything. He didn't want to run the backhoe when our backhoe operator left, and we said, Chris, you ran the backhoe, and then he just ran the backhoe. He doesn't complain a lot, but he's just an amazing person. And
Have you ever got one that run the damn thing?
He's just like, I'll dig, I don't want to run it. And then he got on and ran it, and he's doing great. He'll get in the manhole, repair the manholes, he'll run the back on. The guy will 99% of the time I'll answer your phone. I'll answer the phone when you call him for backup. Depending on who's calling him. He doesn't answer when I call, but everybody else he answers the call. So, but he's there for all these guys when they need him. They know they count on him. So, thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Anyone from the audience? Okay. Well, I'm going to read resolution.
Oh, you got one coming up.
Wow.
Up there.
Oh.
Spotted him.
Thank you. He has broad shoulders.
I've worked with Chris, been with the district for some years now, and definitely makes coming to work fun. But another thing, when he said he looks forward to another 25 years with the district, it definitely makes me happy because I'm glad he's sticking around, because I learned a lot from Chris, but there's still, I know, a lot more that I would like to learn from Chris. And so
He couldn't get a job anymore.
good to have. He's good to have him.
All right, anyone else from the audience? Okay, I'm going to read your resolution here. Whereas Christopher Jones, having faithfully served 15 continuous years as an employee of the McKinneyville Community Services District from April 21st, 2004 to April 21st, 2019, and whereas throughout his years of service, Chris has demonstrated unwavering loyalty and dedication, and whereas Chris lends his talents, experience, and leadership to the development and service to the district, having served in a variety of positions such as mechanic, treatment plant operator, and equipment operator, and whereas Chris has assisted in training new employees on district procedures, such hydro cleaning, new surface installations, leak repairs, paving, to name a few, and takes the time to share his gifted troubleshooting skills. And whereas Chris has assisted in several projects resulting in substantial cost savings to the district, from station rehabilitation and upgrades, manhole repairs, vehicle repairs, and servicing, and now therefore be resolved that the Board of the McKinleyville Community Services District hereby confers upon Christopher Jones its highest commendation for the dedicated service he has performed for the district and the community, and further marks this historic accomplishment as a McKinleyville Community Service District employee for 15 years. Thank you. And with that, we'll call, I think, the roll and then take a picture. Okay.
Where's Hunty?
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Couch?
Yes.
Mayo?
Well, I was going to recuse.
Recording, yes.
I was going to recuse myself on that. I got the picture here. You know which picture I'm talking about. I'm deleting it right now.
And Corbin?
Yes. Okay, let's go have a picture.
It was yesterday.
Here we go.
Well, he's going to be.
Yeah. You don't want to be taken from the still spot.
Not shy here.
No, I'm going to be out of the way.
Seriously, you guys are so brave. You can see me close.
Take hard.
All right.
Get a ribbon right here.
Thank you. Don't cry. You wouldn't know it was.
Here we go.
Thank you. Get one back. Oh, you're welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Of course. You got 30 years between the two of you.
That's awesome.
Go ahead and grab the cupcake. Leslie pulled out the cupcakes, everybody, so if you have any complaints about which ones we got, they're Leslie's favorites.
I like the bacon beer one.
The bacon beer ones?
You ever get those? Oh, man, they are.
Are those gluten-free ones?
No, there's a couple different places that you have the specialty of the cupcake dish. And the bacon beer cupcakes are good.
So you might get my text now. I just shut my phone off and turned it back on, and I got 50 texts.
Yeah.
6 missed calls.
Yeah. Great, we're singing.
Just gotta love headphones.
So we're now on E4, consideration of appointment of applicant Ben Winkler for vacant position on the Recreation Advisory Committee, RAC. And we'll call on Leslie Frisbee, Recreation Director, to present.
It is the duty of the Board of Directors to vet and select the most qualified candidates to become members of the Recreation Advisory Committee. The Board of Directors is obligated to interview all candidates, discuss the candidates' qualifications, and select the most qualified candidates to serve on the committee by majority vote. There is currently one regular voting member seat and one student opening and 2 alternate openings on the RAC. Staff has posted sufficient notice through local media and at district facilities of the vacancies for the RAC. Mr. Ben Winker submitted a letter of application on April 4th. Staff shared Mr. Winker's letter of application with the Recreation Advisory Committee and at the RAC meeting on April 18th. The Recreation Advisory Committee unanimously supported Mr. Winker's interest in becoming a member of the committee. Ben Winker has been a Humboldt County resident for almost 30 years and has been a McKinleyville resident for roughly 10 of those years. Mr. Winker has several years of experience serving on various boards and in community outreach. His experience and enthusiasm for community and service to community will be of value to the RAC and the MCSD board. Staff recommends that the board consider the information provided, air questions, take public comment, and vote on the appointment of Ben Winker to the Recreation Advisory Committee for a 4-year term as a regular voting member.
And is Mr. Winker in the audience?
Yes.
You want to step forward?
Thanks for having me. Are you supposed to introduce myself? Okay, thanks. I've been living in Humboldt County, like I said, like Leslie said, for 30 years. I've been in McKinleyville for 10 of them. I've enjoyed the growth, and I've enjoyed the parks and the trees growing, and I've enjoyed what the community's grown into. I appreciate the outdoor events, the growth of the trails, the growth of the signage, the growth of just the maturity of the McKinleyville area. Recently became homeowners, so I'm really happy to be putting in boots and participating a little deeper. And so it's just a great opportunity to work with such great people. And hearing from some of the people that are honored here tonight, I feel humbled and appreciative of the consideration you have for me, for the Recreation Committee.
Any questions? Okay.
Welcome.
Anyone from the audience want to come to the podium? Comment? Okay.
I'd like to move the nomination.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there board comment?
I have a comment. I think it was about a dozen years ago. I remember meeting Ben and at the ACRC and just
Recycling Center.
At the Recycling Center, and it was such a pleasure to meet somebody so friendly and open. So I look forward to you joining the RAC and getting more involved with the Community Services District. So thank you for your nomination and your. We'll see. Your pending appointment.
Well, I just want to say I think you're a real capable and competent person who will do justice by the community. So.
Yeah, thanks for stepping up.
Yeah, thank you for stepping up.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Please call the roll.
Burris Hunky?
Yes.
Burr?
Aye.
Couch?
Yes.
Mayo?
Yes.
Burr?
Yes. Congratulations.
You're welcome.
The next item is E5. Consider approval of the Azalea Hall lobby enhancements as proposed by the McKinleyville Senior Center. And it's page 86 of the packet. We'll hear from Leslie Frisbee.
So the McKinleyville Senior Center has put in a request to do some enhancements to the lobby at Azalea Hall. The staff note lists those in detail and even provides some pictures in attachment 1. I think Candor Day and some other seniors are here to speak on behalf of the project. I know that they've received grant funding to make the purchases for this project, and they have spoken to the fire marshal and gotten approval with some specific requirements to enhancements from the fire department. So staff recommends that the board review the information provided, discuss, air questions, take public comment, and vote to approve or disapprove the proposed enhancements to the Azalea Hall lobby to be executed by the McKinleyville Senior Center. I will also comment that it is already within their agreement that any additions or equipment that they choose to place in Azalea Hall, they do so at their own risk, and it would not be, like, the damage or vandalism or something like that would not be the responsibility of the district.
Who owns it when the lease ends?
They do.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, having quite a bit of rental experience, is this then become our property, or does it stay their property?
If it is movable and not permanently attached, then it's theirs.
Okay. Any other board questions? Any other staff? We'll open it up to the public.
Hello. I'm Candy Day. I'm the director of the McKinneyville Senior Center, and there's three of us that would like to address you briefly this evening. We think that the lobby space, as it's presently configured, is wasted space. Very few people use it. You know, there's one chair in there where people sit in from time to time, but otherwise it can go month after month without much use. And we'd like to make it more useful and functional. We really need a space where people can sit informally. Our senior wing is always busy with an activity. There's always something going on. There's bingo or peanut ball or knitting, something going on. So there's no place where people can just sit and gather and socialize, and that's what we're aiming to do with the lobby. We also would like to hang art on the walls and just make it much more warm and friendly for the community. And we think that it will also be an asset for everyone who uses this area hall in this room. It will just add an additional amenity. We're very willing to be sure that a staff of the district has no further work to do because of these additions, and we work closely with the maintenance people and be sure they're responsive to their requests. And as the report says, everything's going to be movable. So if there is someone who wants to rent the room and they don't want those things there, we easily can move them into the senior room and lock them away. We want to be a more welcoming and friendly senior center. There's more people coming into the community all the time, and new people coming into our senior center all the time. And we just want to be sure that they feel that they can join us. And we think this is a great way for us to address that. So I hope you'll consider this request positively. And I can answer any questions as we go on.
Any board questions?
Other people would like to.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tricia Church. I'm one of the volunteers here at the Senior Center. And I just feel that the character of the lobby should really reflect the purpose of the building, which is to accommodate the general public and their various interests. And in particular, our seniors, we would like to see it be a place that is conducive to recreation, socialization, and also information. So we do envision a type of a bulletin board where people could come and see what's going on. Also, there's a trite saying, that first impressions are lasting impressions. But any trite saying is usually trite because there's some truth to it. So I think that that's another thing. Color, as an artist, I feel that, why we paint our rooms with grays and browns is a question for me. So, yes, I'm all for making it a lovely lobby. Thank you.
Right.
Good evening. My name is Helen Hampson, and I have been for the last few months volunteering with Fort Canberra. And our main thing that we wanted to do was to look at different ways that we can draw more seniors into the different activities and programs going on here. And so we've been talking about all kinds of different things that we can do to augment the growth of this. And one of the things was we want to make it look welcoming when you come in the door, that somebody's there to greet you, and to have a lobby that would be, that we can create in cozy little areas. We're thinking mostly in the back area to have a couch or a couple of chairs that people can come in and pick up a magazine or the newspaper or just meet another friend there to talk. We don't have any specific place that we can do that at this point, and in the process to make the room look inviting and attractive for people coming in. So that's our thought, and I guess these are all things that we've already talked about, but I just wanted to present my idea to them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
I support this great enthusiasm for creativity and inviting more people into the center. I think it's wonderful. Thank you.
Any more comments from the public? Okay, I'll take it back to the board. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Juana Sanchez, and I've often, when I've come into the senior, this building, I've often wondered why that is such a wasted space. Because there's no sofas out there, so there's really nothing out there, and it just has always seemed to be kind of a nice, beautiful window there, and it's just beautiful there, but there's no way to kind of use that room. So I think this is a great idea, and I hope you guys do too. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public want to speak? Okay, I'll take it back to the board. In this motion, you have to use the word either approve or disapprove. You can't go staff because it asks us to choose on that. So, do I hear a motion?
I'll move that we approve this idea.
Okay.
It doesn't have a motion number.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take
Well, I was going to say, I especially like the hanging art on the walls out there. I think that's really good. I like the public art, and the fact that you're going to have some kind of a hanging system means you don't have to make holes in the wall, so you won't have a conflict, because we're punching holes in the wall. So I think that's. I like the furniture too, the making company, but I really like to support public art. So that's my.
There are some new good hanging things that allow you not to have to.
Well, you can kind of see them. They drew them in. The pictures are really good too. I don't know who drew those, but my compliments to whoever did it.
Yeah, the conceptual drawings are amazing.
I'm betting that was Trish. Did you paint these, Trish?
The pictures?
Yeah.
Well, I know you like it.
I have a couple of questions. I was the liaison with the senior center for the past about a year, and I can speak to the fact that that room does get crowded and well used, and that this is a really creative use of the lobby, so I really support that. I do wonder, let's say there is a disagreement between, the district would find that there was something placed in the lobby that was not, to our liking. How do we address that sort of design decision making in this public space?
That's why I came back to you guys.
We're planning to make it very attractive but quite neutral. So we don't think there's anything we're going to put in there that is going to raise anybody's hackles. It's neutral colors and, just 2 chairs and 1 chair that will go backwards in case somebody needs to lie down and so forth. So we don't anticipate it, but if something does come up, we'll be just glad to change it. Yeah, just let us know. And we'll be glad to.
No, I think I did second.
Well, you didn't do it, and I didn't hear it.
I'll second
okay, now we got it.
And follow it by saying I'm also glad to see that you preemptively put in here that any items placed out there are not at your own risk, and that you might expect.
We know from living in this space that there's room there. We expect it.
Okay. Any last board member comments? Okay, board member Mayo.
Right. So I like I think it's a good idea. And I like the drawings, but I don't want to limit you to having to stick to these drawings. I think you should have, the flexibility. Let's say, for instance, maybe put two couches on either, the one on the wall and then two on the open. I'd like to see you have the flexibility to, be creative.
And we have to maintain a 4-foot corridor.
Yeah.
So we won't be too creative, but thank you.
Yeah, that was my only concern was that we weren't going to run afoul of the fire marshal, so that was why I asked them to get clearance and get some sort of criteria related to that, because there is access and egress on both ends of the lobby. So.
The fire marshal didn't have any concerns about it, but he did give us specifications. He wants us to maintain a 4-foot corridor, which those drawings allow us.
Oh, okay. All right.
Any other board member comment?
I especially like the little cozy card table in the corner, because I spent a lot of time in the senior center this month, and it was wonderful to see all the people playing cards and conversing. So that little cozy place looks wonderful to me. That little cozy place.
I just have very few comments. First, thank you for bringing such a positive, innovative vision, doing your homework with the fire marshal, and that kind of thing. And then lastly, when I looked at your arguments or your discussion points for that building and the purposes of it, I came away, why didn't I think of that? So I just want to say, great project. Okay, roll call.
Yes.
Aye.
Couch?
Aye.
Graham?
Yes.
Gordon?
Yes. Our next item is E7, the Mad River floodplain.
No, we're doing the skate park.
I'm sorry, what did I?
E6.
We're on E6.
We're on 6.
Oh, okay, I must have turned my pages too fast. Yes, I did. Last time I know, the seniors weren't proposing the skateboard park. So we'll call E6, consider approval of the draft skate park design in the Humboldt State Skate Park collective initiation and the permitting process for the development of the McKinneyville Skate Park. And we'll call first on Leslie Frisbee, and then representatives, Director Charlie Caldwell, and then the public. And with that, we'll call Leslie.
Okay, I can keep it short. Charlie Caldwell, the Humboldt Skate Park Collective, has made a short PowerPoint presentation to present the design of the skate park. And with that, he will be asking for your approval for him, for the collective to move forward in getting the permits to begin development of the project. Charlie?
Thank you.
Uh-oh.
There it is. So I've met a few times with the service district, with Greg and Leslie and James, walking through this process and coming up with our preliminary design that we're going back to our design group with right now to get all of our engineering documents. So this is basically, it's 22,000 square feet at approximately $606,000. So I believe this has a, can I show the corner thing on it?
I don't think it reaches.
Probably doesn't. Anyway. So I'm just going to move through this as they're working on that. So basically, we will phase this skate park. So right now, our goal is to get all of our engineering documents stamped and the permitting in place, so we can meet the requirements also of the Prop 68 grant that we're working on right now with the service district. So this is our basic design, so you guys can actually see what the skate park looks like, and how it's kind of laid out. It's still got our horse head with the flow track, and then they've accompanied all of the street and rest of the skate area into the skate park. And at the same time we were doing this, we went through a couple processes, making sure that we had still all the space required that the sheriff's department and the county needed for that same piece of property, which was the process of us going through this redesign. So our current funding is over $134,000. We have $20,000 of that money from the McKinleyville Area Fund that's set aside for this design. So what we're working on right now is completing the engineering and obtaining a permit for the skate park, so we can bring that back to you for approval for construction down the road. So after we spend the $20,000 in the bank, there'd be $114,000, which is actually enough money to build a smaller phase of this new design, which is actually larger than what I've been setting up out here. So all of you have seen the ramp set out in the park that we'll be setting up again this summer. But we actually have the funding to build something that's larger than that in this location as the very first phase. So I'm not calling any of them phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3. They're just going to be 3 phases. So we're just asking you to move forward with the permitting process so we can work with Liquid Stone to get all of our engineering and everything in place. This kind of shows you the 3 phases that I'm talking about. So the smaller 40 by 80, which is on the site right next to the turnaround, that's the section I'm talking about that we can actually build with the funds that we have right now. The goal is to build the whole skate park, to get all the funding and build it all. We're working on multiple grants right now, and we're working on the Prop 68, but we're also working on 2 or 3 other grants that are in process right now. The Tony Hawk grant, Women for Life grant, which is a $100,000 grant. And I believe it's on my next slide too. But it just kind of gives you an idea. If you look at kind of the upper piece of the actual skate park, so that would be the section. So it's like 2 really nice quarter pipes with some nice bumps in the street area. So actually it would give our kids a place to start skating right away. If everything failed, we could get in granting, we could still move forward and get a phase 1 in the ground. So we're working on the Prop 68. Those are the 2 grants we're working on. The other thing that I'm in the process of doing right now is working with the Humboldt Lodging Alliance for matching funds. So the goal with the Humboldt Lodging Alliance is every time we have a grant that comes up, if they accept our projects as a whole, which is all of our projects in the area, the Fortuna Skate Park, the Willow Creek Skate Park, the work we're doing in Eureka right now, and the McKinleyville Skate Park. Those are the 4 main projects we're working on right now, because we want to bring people to the area too. So we haven't got confirmation or anything from them. We're just in the beginning process to start working. But every time that we would write a grant, we would go to them and say, are you willing to match this grant for this particular park? And then they would become part of that grant. So that's one of the processes that we're working on right now. Like I said, we don't have confirmation. Contact has been made. The request has been written, but it hasn't gone into their hands yet. So we're waiting for them to respond to us. Again, we'll be doing a lot of fundraising this summer, working with the stuff in the park. Now that we have a design, you're going to see some shirts come out, and hats come out, and all of this kind of stuff, probably around Pony Express. So we're going to be doing a lot of our regular fundraising again for the skate park that we've held off on until we got to this stage. That's kind of what the skate park looks like on the property, to kind of give you an idea. I think it's going to be wonderful when we get it done. Gives you a bigger picture of the whole area. And that's basically my presentation. Also attached, you'll see in your packet is my quarterly report, which is basically the same information that I just presented in the PowerPoint. Any questions? Oh, you didn't attach that?
No, I'm sorry.
Board comments or questions?
Thanks, Charlie. This is a great project. It's nice to see that you have an idea for phasing should something happen and not be able to finish the whole thing. Is there anything about phasing that detracts from the funders wanting to fund the bigger project?
No, actually, what we found is when you get the first phase in, that funding starts coming in for the other phases because you have a place to start doing events. And so we're seeing this in other facilities up in Oregon. They get the first phase in, and pretty soon within a year, the second phase is done, and within a 2 or 3 year period, the remaining phases. Now, when we're phasing, we're going to go for the permit for the whole park. So we may have to go back to permitting if we go to phases, go back to permitting and say this is how much we're going to complete now, and extend the permit for the rest of that area. Part of the permitting process, but the engineering design shouldn't change.
And a question on the design. The center part appears to be gold. Is that?
So it's kind of a bronze and I guess what you would call the other color. So it's kind of a bronze and a, what's the right word? Right now we're talking about the darker color of the rest of the skate park. Yeah, we like the way it looks. It's not just a big white piece of concrete in the ground. It's some of the art that goes along with the horse scheme and everything that's going along there.
I assume it's stained concrete?
Yes, it's colored concrete.
Remember Bill and then remember Michelle.
With that?
Why my electric bill should
I thought you had.
Oh, never mind. You're not with PG&E, sorry.
Only for about 4 more months.
No,
Are you guys going near it until this is built? You know?
yeah, so we can find a razor. How's parking? Are we going to have enough parking? That was my only concern is the parking situation.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I think the parking is sufficient for our park. I don't know how that's going to change when we go through this Prop 68 and we start adding all of this stuff. I do know that one of the things we want to do is leave a pathway for the sheriff to be able to get in and out of the sheriff's department. So I can't answer that question and without going through the engineering process and actually understanding if I have to put handicap or any extra parking in.
Right, yeah. So I was thinking about time of use. The bank parking has a lot of parking and it's not open late. And on the weekends it's, well, maybe it is open.
Most people are going to be skating. The only time you're going to really run into a parking problem is when you do a big event.
Right.
Most of the time, if you go like to Eureka Skate Park, there's never a real parking issue because everybody just comes with their skateboards. Most people skate to the skate park. Being right in the center of town, most people are just going to skate to the skate park. So I don't think you're going to see that during normal operations. No, when we do an event, we're going to have the same issues that we have with all of our events.
Yeah, staycation type things and stuff. It's just a thought. I mean, it's not anything that's putting me off at all. It's just something to consider.
No, it's a good thing that we need to look at that.
Yeah. I could see if we were having say if there was a tournament going on and a large wedding or maybe an event at the activity center where it could get kind of crowded here, but there's enough parking. When Rotary does the fundraiser, the fall fundraiser, we have every bit of 300 people here, and there's enough parking for that. So.
Yeah, just a consideration, that's all.
Okay, Michelle.
I just say, wow, people have waited for this for so long. How many years have you been working on this? It's so exciting. When I opened up the packet and I saw this, I was just like, wow, this is so neat. My grandkids will be thrilled.
So I've been working on McKinney Skate Park for almost 20 years.
Oh my
I've been
gosh.
involved with skate parks for almost 15
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for all your hard work. This is very exciting.
Yeah, I have one other, and I meant to ask it several different times. What about water? Like inside the big, are we got a pump?
So this is the drainage and everything is has already been looked into for the skate park, so we know what our drainage is. There's, all of that is part of our design features to make sure that the park drains.
I mean, the big hole.
Yeah, so there's a drain in the center of that, so when it fills with the water, it goes right into our main drain system.
Right, so, correct me if I'm wrong, but the drain, the skate park is set up so that we can gravity right into the surface?
Yes, right,
yeah. Okay. So
yeah, we are not, so the previous design, we had a pump system in it.
Yeah.
So this one we're bringing up just a little bit, I think 3 feet in the center, not on the outsides necessarily. And it's gravity drain to the drains out in the street on Wind Road.
So I assume this is for approval to move into the permitting process. Who's the permit applicant?
It will go through the county. So we have to go through the county for permitting, but I need to work with permitting, our engineering group, and Liquid Stone to get through that process. I need all 3 documents taking place at the same time. So as I'm getting my engineer documents, it needs to go to the county. County needs to approve it, and it needs to go through our engineering to make sure that engineering can get a final stamp on it.
I'm going to guess that McKinleyville Community Services District will probably have to be the lead agency.
Yeah.
And we will be working with Reagan Leska all through every one of these steps. And yes, Greg and I have been talking about how we're going to sequence the service district kind of running the project. Supporting it is basically, especially with Prop 68, we have to do it that way. So.
Board Member Couch?
Oh, I support it.
Just a couple comments. I know when all this started, there was always a hope Tony Hawk would come out when it opened. Is that still viable?
I'll find out when we get there.
Okay.
Just to let you know, we actually have professional skate teams. We had hard luck here last year. I've actually got 3 professional skate teams that want to come to the area this year for our skate jam, our Pro-Am skate jam that we'll be doing in Eureka this year. So, yeah, we are seeing the professional skaters come in and participate in our events in Humboldt County.
And then I just want to say, of course, it's a community vision, but I thought you carried that vision for a very long time. And I know for a while you were pretty hot under the collar with us, and then that got smoothed out, and then we got hot under the collar with you, and that got smoothed out. But it wouldn't have happened if you didn't have this consistent vision that we can do this and build this. And so I really want to thank you for keeping it moving, keeping it progressing. And we may have to measure progress in decades, but we're getting there.
I just thank all you guys for your support. And the cool thing is it's not just McKinleyville this is happening, it's our whole community. It's all of Humboldt County, it's moved over into Trinity County. There's stuff going on in Hayfork. We're over in Trinity County in Willow Creek. And I've got a couple of projects that we're looking at up around Crescent City up in Delaware. And we're supporting what's going on in Mendocino right now. So our organization, because of everything we've gone through, has become a much larger, more organized organization. And if it weren't for pushback from you guys, that never would have happened. So,
okay. Yes, we need to open it to the public.
You open the floodgate. I think it's a great project. I appreciate it. I think it's another way to center our community around this recreation space in this park. I think it's a huge opportunity for young and old to learn to skateboard and roller skate and recreate. And I think it's a great opportunity. So I support you supporting it. Thank you.
Okay.
Bring it back.
Yeah.
I move to approve item E6.
I second it.
Okay, can you please call the roll?
Director Burke?
Aye.
Arsanti?
Yes.
Couch?
Yes.
Mayo?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes. Thank you. Okay. This time it's for Rio, E7, Mad River Floodplain and Public Access Enhancement Project, status report and update. Darren Morale, North Coast Director of California Trout, information only. That means we cannot take action, but we can make comments. And thank you for coming.
Chairman Corbett, thank you for having me and members of the board. My name is Darren. I'll just roll into this while they get my presentation ready. My name is Darren. I'm the North Coast Director for California Trout. We are a statewide nonprofit organization, and we focus on ensuring resilient wild fish in healthy waters for a better California. That's our mission. We have a map to show you that our programs throughout the state have offices regionally, and our regional offices work with local partners to focus on local issues that are relevant to that region. So we've got a North Coast office, we have a Shasta office, Eastern Sierra, Central Valley, and a Southern California office. I was going to mention that my predecessor, who worked for CalTrot for 20 years, is a McKinleyville resident. You may know Tom Westlow, who now works for Senator McGuire's Fisheries Committee in Sacramento. I replaced Tom in 2011. So I first want to introduce my program here on the North Coast. I'm the director, and I'm very fortunate to have Mary Burke as a program coordinator, and she is involved in some of our program initiatives as well as managing some of our projects locally. So here's our map of our regions throughout the state. I also have 2 additional project managers on my staff in my office in Arcata, Marisa Adams, Matt Matheny, and we have an administrative assistant, Lorraine LeBlanc. We're all scientists focused on recovery of fish in the region. So one of CalTrout's primary activities is to work with local landowners and other partners to secure grant funds for projects. To carry out these projects, we rely on either our own internal expertise or expertise from consultants and partners in the local region, or both. For our Mad River project, you can see that CalTrout has been successful at securing funding from the State Coastal Conservancy in the amount of $325,000 for the design and implementation of this project. We've got an additional $76,000 from the Department of Fish and Wildlife's Fishery Restoration Grants Program. We're applying for an additional $25,000 pending from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to supplement our funds for the permitting and essentially the permitting phase. And your district has provided in-kind and grant funds for some components of the design. You can also see that our consultant team includes several local firms. Our restoration design engineer is Rose Patnode with Northern Hydrology and Engineering. We have public access design engineers with SHN engineering firm in Eureka. We have a trail consultant, Chris Turner. Interpretive signage prepared by Redwood Community Action Agency, and we have environmental compliance planning support from McBain Associates, a firm in Arcata, California. This project, so here's our timeline for the project, and we've been able to develop this without real urgency because it's more or less dependent on the service district's decommissioning of your percolation ponds out on the Mad River, which Mary tells me is scheduled for 2021. So we began the project in 2015 with applications for grant funding, went through a conceptual design phase, data collection phase. In 2017-18, completed our restoration engineering designs, and now we're focused on the public access designs and the environmental compliance stages of the project. And we hope to begin implementation as early as this fall with some of the public access components, and then focusing on the restoration implementation during 2021 or 2022, depending on your service district's schedule for that project. And as I mentioned, the service district's grant funds are being used primarily for the public access features, and Greg, I think, could probably speak to that better than I, but all of the other components of the design and permitting are provided by the funding that CalTrout's provided. provided for the project. As the landowner, you approved Caltrout to pursue grant funding for these 3 different objectives for the project. The first is the habitat restoration component, looking to restore some juvenile coho salmon and other wildlife habitat at this project site. The second is the enhancement of coastal public access. This property provides very amenable access for coastal public access, including for ADA support, trail hiking, and so forth. And the third is this feature of informing your long-term property management decisions as you look to decommission this infiltration pond and find another way to dispose of your wastewater. So that biofiltration study is an assessment of the reclaimed wastewater irrigation and uptake rates from different vegetation types, and I'll talk about that in a second. So here's a map of the site. You're likely fairly familiar with this. At the top of the map, you see School Road heading to the west and terminating at Bluffs, Fisher Road running south to the Hammond Bridge, and a very broad sweeping bend of the Mad River, the last before it joins the Pacific Ocean. And you squint and see the white lines toward the left side of the photograph. Starting from School Road, you see the public access features at the top, the little triangle-shaped lines coming down onto the floodplain, and the white lines outlining the habitat restoration and channel features down the floodplain of the Mad River. So as I mentioned, the habitat features of the project are focused primarily on winter rearing habitat for coho salmon. This type of habitat is very limited in the lower Mad River, but vital to the life cycle of coho salmon. These lower rearing habitats and floodplain features provide very good growth rates for juvenile fish, which enable them to survive better when they go out into the ocean. So here's the sort of couple different versions of our design for the habitat restoration plans. At the top, you see the whole feature with a channel running back from its mouth with the Mad River toward the infiltration ponds. And then the lower map shows sort of an enlarged version of that. So what we're proposing here is enhancement of a drainage channel that connects the river to the infiltration ponds, removal of the pond levees on the west side and on the south side, so the river-facing levees will be removed. We'll recontour the floodplain pond to make it more like a swale, sort of a deep swale of pond water in the wintertime, maintaining some islands in the middle of the pond for some topographic variation and to support wildlife habitat. And the way this would function is that as the river rises with the tidal fluctuations, water would back in from the lower end at the mouth up into these ponds and daily ebb out in and out of the ponds, providing that connection for fish to get in and out of the ponds. So switching here a little bit to the public access opportunities, I imagine you've all been out to this site before and you have wonderful vistas of the Mad River and the ocean. So enhancing this for public access is likely going to be a very nice community feature. So Mary tells me the county will develop designs for the parking improvements along School Road, and our project will provide trails down to a vista bluff overlook that will be paved to provide ADA access so that residents can get down that slope. Here's a little bit of the conceptual designs that are being developed by SHN for the public access components. So the inset map, you see, I wish I had a pointer, but you see School Road and the lines that are more or less linear are the public access features that provide ADA access. So those would be paved with a little turnout at the very top and a place for some signage to provide a map of the whole site, and then you can go down the paved road, paved pathway to the the bluff overlook, where there'll be additional signage, and it has some other graphics to show you on that. And then the black lines that connect to the ADA paved section would turn to gravel trail for a footpath, but sort of signal that you're off into a different adventure there as you head into the floodplain areas of the Mad River. And then at the bottom, it's to the south or to the bottom of the map, off of this map, there will be a public a boat launch for people to hike down and put their kayak or canoe or stand-up paddleboard into the Mad River. And a couple of photographs to show you that feature. So here's some conceptual drawings of what the bluff overlook feature would look like. This is kind of recessed down off of the school road elevation to provide a little privacy as people get down to the bluff overlook, and also provide the residents up above a little bit of privacy from visitors down here. And as I say, this is all accessible to ADA public use. And SHN, the geologic report from SHN provided recommendations for this engineering design related to the county stabilization project that was built in 2009. So it all kind of fit in sync with that project. In addition to those features, we have some signage that's developed. So this is the signage that will be at the top, at the kiosk, at the entrance, providing a map for orientation and the different land uses and allowable activities on the project or on the site. Here's some of the interpretive signage related to habitat use. You can find out what critters are using the project, using the habitat site. And then here is some public access signage that relates to the Wiyot cultural uses of the site historically. And we worked with the Wiyot tribe to sort of vet and get their support for these features as well. And here's some examples of what the boat launch might look like, providing some hardened steps to make that transition into the water a little bit easier for boat users. There are a couple examples locally of these kind of features at the City of Eureka and Elk River and the freshwater farms at the North Coast Land Trust property, Three Corners, this type of thing. And finally, in partnership with the district, we're conducting an experiment with water uptake from different forest types. So you see sort of our experimental plot here that's out on the site. We planted cottonwoods in 2011 and replanted them in 2016. We've got a patch of red alder, a patch of mixed forest, including cottonwood, willow, and Sitka spruce. And then we have a control site that is the surrounding pasture, essentially, to monitor those different vegetation types. And I think we're in the third year of experimentation, and a 2018 annual report is nearly complete, and we'll have that out pretty soon. And finally, for next steps, as I mentioned, we're in the environmental compliance stage. We'll be finishing the designs for the public access features and folding all of that into the CEQA document. I understand that the service district is the lead on the CEQA. We'll have a public review period for the CEQA document, and your board will have the opportunity to adopt that CEQA document when it's completed. And then we'll pursue the various other permits that are required for the project. And as I mentioned, targeting fall of 2019 to begin the implementation. It'll probably take a little longer to align the habitat restoration components. We're planning to do that in the summer of 2020. With that, I'll conclude my presentation and take any questions from my friends.
I have a question. If you totally do everything that you want to do, what is the total cost of everything?
I'm going to defer to the project manager, Mary, on that.
Thank you.
The total cost will be developed when the district is ready to pursue implementation funding.
Can you give us a kind of an estimate? Like, is it $1 million, 1.5 million?
So there's multiple features on the landscape. The restoration feature has an engineer's cost estimate that is under $1 million. It's I think it's under $700,000.
What are the other, so we're looking at the whole project here, right? Is that correct?
We don't have cost estimates for every element.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we don't know how much it's going to cost. And we're paying 25% matching. Is that correct?
Match funds are determined by the funding source that you pursue. Sometimes you can match different grants with each other.
This type of habitat restoration project is very popular with the grant programs that we're accessing.
And up until now, our matches have all been in kind.
Could this easily be $2 or $3 million?
Based on my experience with restoration projects, I doubt it would be that high. I don't know the exact volume of the levee that will be removed, but that would be the most expensive component, I think.
Thank you.
I just had a comment. As you move north, you're more and more coming into the ancestral territory of the Yurok as well. I think it might be good just to send a copy of your project with the name to the Yurok tribe, Trinidad Rancheria and Blue Lake. I don't think they will challenge it, but if they got a concern, you need to know really early on. And then, without saying too much, this project is very close to an old village site, and so I would be careful in your survey part of the EIR for that reason. And a lot of that, I think, got taken care of when the Mad River changed its course slightly, and I think wiped out that whole site, but maybe not all. But my biggest concern is how much do you think permits are going to cost as total part of the project? And two, all the permits have to be done simultaneously, and where are we on the district's ability to grant the right to proceed and so on and so forth, and are we on track? And if we aren't on track, what do we have to do to make it on track?
My understanding is that the funding for CEQAs is already in hand. So we're working with the Coastal Conservancy, our funding partner, and Michael Bowen, who's a very qualified CEQA expert, and Mary, and we have the firm McBain Associates providing support for development of the CEQA document. So that should be forthcoming very soon. After that, we'll have to run the gamut on the permits. I think it'll involve the coastal development permit, Section 7 consultation, and so there will be a range of those county permits as well, water quality certification, and those have costs. We have staff time and budget to put those applications together and complete the permits. So my assumption is we'll be able to do that with the funding that is in hand. And I don't know the total price tag off the top of my head here in terms of what it's going to cost, but.
So I'd like to ask our staff, are you as confident with the permit timing? That it's all going to be within timing of the grant, all within timing?
I think at this point, we don't have any money for implementation yet. We've not got the grants for implementation yet. We do have the grants to get through this next phase, which is the permitting phase, and then after that, I think we'll have to go out and get grants. And I'm not experienced with grants from the agencies that we're getting grants from, so I don't know. I don't have any idea on how the turnaround time. I would have to defer to Mary and her team on the ability to be able to get those grant funds. We have committed to the Regional Water Quality Control Board that we would probably implement this project by 2022. So that's my major concern, that we're able to get it at least.
So that's not too long away. We have to watch for that.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Corbett, we have a very good track record of getting funding for implementation, and actually the funding for design and permitting is the more challenging parts to get grant funding for. So
I'm not arguing against your track record.
No, I know.
I'm saying that
I would be optimistic.
California permit process has a life of its own sometimes, and has to be carefully managed. Any other board comments?
No, I mean, one of the things too is this is our old percolation pond site, which is where we used to dispose of wastewater, and the state is not allowing, in the future, they're not going to allow percolation ponds. So the district would see a financial impact of decommissioning those ponds, kind of no matter what we do. So rather than just having a decommissioning project and spending money on that, this is a better option, I think.
This project has always been very attractive to me, as opposed to just basically pushing the levees in and planting some trees out there, and providing some very much needed coho habitat. I've been enamored with the idea of this since the first time I talked about it with some Fish and Wildlife warden and scientist from Fish and Wildlife. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I think that this is a good fit for our community.
And anything the district needs to do to keep it moving?
Not at this time. Just your support.
Okay.
What's the status of coho now? Are they
coho salmon are listed as threatened in our region.
I would say the other fish that you're making a wonderful enhancement project for are tidewater gobies. And I know they have been found in that drainage area. And so they're a rare and endangered species, and they don't have the cachet of coho, but it'll be a great enhancement project.
They do in
for
some
them too.
locations, and they likely would inhabit that channel that we would construct.
Yeah, they're not as good looking as the coho.
Bitty.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you for bringing this as update. I'd ask for it as chairman because we like to keep all our projects on track. And so if you run into problems, please come by and let us know. Because we're trying to be supportive of building the project, and all projects run into problems from time to time. Just let us know what they are. In a timely fashion, hopefully we can be helpful with that.
Thank you.
And thank you. I just had one other comment on.
Thank you, Darren.
Volunteer, which I very rarely do without prior permission of a board member, but there is an exemption in the government code for nonprofits, and that does not require a recusal, which would if you represent a private entity, and I'm not. So I just wanted to let people know that.
And I've sent that information along to our district council to get concurrence on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to, you jumped what I was going to say, so I appreciate it on checking with our tribal connections up north, John. I appreciate you bringing that up, because there is some clarifications depending on who you speak to about that.
Well, it's mutually protected both in the district and the board member. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, we don't want to hack off the folks that were here long before we were.
Thanks for coming out tonight.
Anybody older than me?
Yes. I'm sorry, did you want to speak to the project at all?
No.
Okay.
A lot of things still going on. Good.
Ladies' room, do we just leave?
I'm sorry, what?
We need to go to ladies' room, do we?
Okay, don't worry about it. We're going to take a 10-minute break.
Not yet. We're all going to sneak out while you're gone.
Wouldn't that be funny as hell if they just go hide?
We went and saw a show when we were in Reno. It's called The Illusionists. It's still see it. Very high ratings, but anyway, they're basically been there for 8 months, and there's like 6 of them. And they all have a different specialty. And this lady who was sitting down in front, she got up to go potty in the middle of the show, and she probably regretted that one. She did.
She got picked on.
Oh yeah. I'm surprised they didn't make her disappear or something like that. But
So Leslie, did I do good with the cupcakes?
Yes, thank you.
Because they,
See, I was very specific. I was curious how that would play out.
well, and you were lucky because the vast majority of the ones that you picked, they had them today. Because I ordered just in case, I ordered the chocolate ones because that's.
Is this a little place in Arcata?
Yeah, it's a little place right down there next to APD. Yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you for your choice.
I like to go in there when I'm trying to get touch with my feminine side.
Well, they do have a lot, there are a lot of pastels and pinks and stuff like that.
They market their location for like birthday parties, but I mean, you're only having little girl birthday parties in there.
Yeah, and it's pretty small. The inside of it looks just kind of like an Easter egg.
Pretty tiny.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of seating for how small it is, actually.
Well, that's because of little chairs.
Yeah.
For little kids. Yeah, I think if you ate a lot of cupcakes, you probably wouldn't fit in them chairs for very long.
Yeah, let's talk about ones that are freaking.
Oh, the German chocolate ones?
So freaking amazing.
Yeah. They had some, they only had, I got like 3 of everything that they had that I thought that Leslie would like, and they had these salted caramel ones, but they only had one of them, and I was like...
Did you get it and eat it?
No, I had this obsessive compulsive thing with only ordering, getting 3 of each.
You didn't ask Chris what his favorite cupcake was?
They don't kill Chris.
Heck no.
Chris should have gotten donuts.
I was going to say, you didn't get a
Yeah, well, don't worry about it, I'm the same way. And I think as we get elderly, we all end up in that boat, we understand. When I see these congressional hearings, I wonder why they don't get up to me, but I think they wait for their questions and so they can go out and take a pee break and you never notice it.
Well, you never notice it because the camera zoomed in.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Fulbright, who had the longest filibuster, had a gourd. He strapped a gourd to his leg, so you could the gourd. Yeah.
That's the kind of fact you know, Dennis.
He has had good things to say.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I'm missing that Jeopardy guy tonight. That guy's doing an amazing job.
Which guy?
Jeopardy guy.
Yeah.
And 19 wins now. Million. 500, a million, 600,000.
Oh, he is something else. It's like a machine.
Sure. Well, and how he does it too. He doubles every time he hits.
Right, well, and then that way he has enough money he can keep betting more and still be above the nearest rival. And so that's where
being a professional gambler is helping as well. The strategy part of it.
Oh, right, well, it's calm about betting 50,000. What's the big deal? That's what the odds say I might win, so.
Yeah. No, he's pretty smart. And
I've been trying to figure out the patterns, the questions he can't answer yet. I'm just about there, but.
What are they?
Well, I said I'm just about there. I'm not. But I can sort of feel there's patterns, and it's areas he doesn't know. But God, he's sharp.
Well, that game is about strategy, so it seems if he's been on there for that long.
But you got to know your stuff. You can have all the strategy in the world, but he's really sharp.
Esoteric stuff.
Because a lot of them I can know the answer, but it takes, I'm thinking about it, they both move before I can.
What surprises me, and I would say, what's my worst subject? Opera. When I get all the opera, I don't know how the hell I do them. I get them, but I don't know shit about opera.
Right.
It's just that they ask the right question. Hip hop, I definitely know nothing about.
Do you get those right?
Nothing.
Well,
I have no idea what they're talking about.
So if we started speaking hip hop here, we've got a secret code. Or communicate without letting you know.
Any kind of new pop music, country, any of it. I have not a clue. All them little blonde-headed singing gals look and sound alike to me. Every one of them. I couldn't tell you one apart. The only reason I know what's her name here from Eureka is because I gave her riding lessons when she was a kid. Boy, did she turn out a boy. My God.
Server.
Sheriff, yeah. I sold her first 2 horses and gave her riding lessons for about 10 years. Nice kid, always was a real nice kid.
Which, you got cupcake and I need that?
That was a good cupcake. I'm thinking of another cupcake.
Unlike her dad and her uncle. Who are good friends, they're just rounders.
Well, looks like we lost everybody but Elaine.
Yep.
Are we ready?
Start up.
We'll take up our E8, review current reserve policy.
Shortest item on the menu. Staff recommends that the board review the current reserve policy requirements, discuss, take public comment, and consider a process to update the current policy. The current reserve policy was passed in fiscal year 2011-2012. In fact, it was passed just before I started work here at the district. It was one of the first things I was given to read. It's like, here you go. Okay. It was, as I understand it, was taken as a template from the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association. They have a fairly impressive number of templates for various policies that are designed for governmental entities. Doing a little research, it looks like it was simply taken directly as written and not modified in any way. And what I would like to suggest is that the reserve policy be discussed and perhaps modified so that it actually fits McKinleyville Community Services District's needs better than, I mean, it's always a great idea to have a reserve policy, considering when it was adopted, the state was, how should we say, helping itself to undesignated reserves from an awful lot of districts, not just ours. So it was very good that it was put in place because that stopped some of that cash grab. But I think at this point it might be a good idea to actually take a look at the requirements and maybe look at updating it or tailoring it to the real needs of this community services district. So our current policy, operating reserve, is calculated at 6 months of annual budgeted operating expenses for all funds. The repair and replacement fund is calculated at 10% of the projected capital asset replacement cost. The compensated absences fund is specifically named in the policy, and it is calculated at vested hours of accrued leave for all eligible employees multiplied by each individual's hourly rate. We keep this in working capital because you never know when somebody needs to take a vacation or a sick leave or something like that. And it is fully funded every year. I recalculate it as part of the year-end process. The rate stabilization fund is supposed to be calculated at 20% of net sales for 2 years. I usually use the prior fiscal year and the current budget year. This fund was created to cover unexpected decreases in revenue, for example, due to drought, or unexpected increases in operating costs. And then the catastrophe fund is calculated at 2% of the district's total plant and equipment costs, and that's per FEMA guidelines. The retiree OPEB fund, OPEB is other post-employment benefits, in our case that means retiree health insurance, is calculated based on the actuarial liability for other post-employment benefits amortized. In addition to these designated reserves, there are also some specific legally restricted reserves. One of them is the bond reserve fund. This is calculated as required by the district's 1982 USDA bond issue, and it is held in a completely separate account at a U.S. bank. Customer deposits, this is calculated per the district's rules and regulations. It's held in working capital because we are a district that refunds deposits to customers who have a full year of on-time payment history as defined by no late notices. So every month there are folks who close out their accounts, their balances are deducted from the deposit if they have one, and whatever is left is refunded. And for those who have an on-time payment history, their deposit is refunded to their account as a credit balance. So it's best to keep that one in working capital rather than sequestered. And then the last one is the capacity fees fund. All capacity fees are collected and sequestered from working capital by the end of the fiscal year. Fees may only legally be used on capital projects that increase the district's water or sewer capacity. So there is an additional reserve that is set aside for CalPERS, the pension liability. This is calculated, as with the OPEB, actuarially every year. It's sequestered from working capital. The funds currently sit in CalTrust. The required portion of this reserve is invoiced by CalPERS annually and paid in full at invoice. We've paid them. They've been invoicing since 2013. We have paid them in full every year. And we will continue to do so if we need to draw down those reserves to do it every year. The other thing you'll notice if you've reviewed the reserve policy that's attachment 1 is that there are no real guidelines given for use of reserves in the current policy. Under what circumstances might funds be moved back into working capital, for what purpose, or under whose authorization? Those are also policy issues that need to be addressed in addition to evaluating the methods of calculation and the dollar totals that can reasonably be held in reserves by the district at any given time. I mean, some of them are fairly clear, but some of them are not quite as clear as you think. I mean, we have the catastrophe fund. What constitutes a catastrophe?
Sorry, guys.
Okay. The fiscal analysis. As of June 30th, 2018, I calculated, as always, I calculated the reserves required for the 17-18 fiscal year, and the totals are listed as follows. The operating reserve, $3.5 million. Repair and replacement, $6 million. Rate stabilization, $2.8 million. Catastrophe, $1.2 million. OPEB, $2.1 million. Pension, $1.9 million. And capacity fees, $2 million. Right? The grand total, if we had the working capital, or if we had the capital to fill all of those buckets completely, would mean that the district is holding $19.7 million as designated reserves. We have approximately $8 million budget. So we'd be holding $19 million. We have about $65 million in total assets. So we'd be holding almost $20 million in reserves. We've been using our cash, obviously, as we've, as working capital to fund the major use was the wastewater plant, of course, and that's been very interesting. But raising rates enough to fill all of these buckets, raising the rates enough on the citizens and ratepayers in McKinleyville to fill $20 million of buckets is not necessarily, it's something that I would like to have the board to have some discussion about. Because that's, in the past, I don't think we've ever had sufficient cash to fund the rate stabilization reserve. We always have enough. We fund pension and OPEB completely. We fund capacity fees because those are simply taken out. We fund the catastrophe. The catastrophe reserve has always been able to be funded. Repair, replacement, and operating reserves, the funding depends on the level of capital that we have circulating through the capital projects that we're trying to do at any given time. And again, the other thing about the capital projects is that the board's policy is that any project under $500,000 is pay-go. It gets paid out of working capital. So that's money that is not getting put into the reserves, and we're not borrowing on those projects. That does reduce the district's debt liability. That's excellent. But there's a trade-off to it, and this is the trade-off. So that's basically all I wanted to give to the board, and discussion is open, and any questions I will happily answer.
Go ahead.
Well, I just started working with Colleen on this, so it's pretty, we're just starting to put things together so we can update things, and, so I don't really have any comments right now about this, but I really appreciate working with Colleen. She's just been wonderful, so I think we'll do real good and be able to help with this.
I just want to throw down a policy range. At the last audit committee, we came up with doing a review every 3 years. There are problems with that. For example, on the pipe capital program, when we get to that, we've got a 5-year review in that. And that it partially starts to deal with the complexity of this. So my recommendation is actually that it get referred to the audit committee to then come up with a joint management and audit committee report on how to handle these issues. I also want to say, and we may not be able to afford not touching the reserves for temporary dips, so we got to be practical, but the more we dip into it, the more it opens it up to the state saying that you have excess funds, and the greater the possibility of limiting grant funds. So there's a tension there that may have to be worked out fund by fund. And I agree with you, we need more policies than we have now. But I'm not sure we may run into a point where the considerations of not endangering future grant funds and the considerations the state not taking the money from us may result in a little bit more ambiguity on these types of financial policies, given the size and scope of the dollars, than we'd ever entertain for something else. But I think you're correct to bring up that we need to review the policy manuals. The other thing is this is very complex, and we're adding to it. It's like onion. Keep adding layers of skin to the onions. Every time we do that, it gets a little bit more complex because these funds are not all the same. And so we're now taking apples, oranges, and bananas. We're throwing them in the same basket, but they're each individually, the banana stays a banana, the apple stays an apple. So it requires, I think, a lot of time and skill on how we move forward in that context. So I'm almost suggesting, I want everyone to comment, and I want to get it from the board, and I want to hear from management. but that we refer it to the audit committee to work up, like I said, a joint management audit committee plan to handle this, because the complexity of doing this in an open meeting is enormous, let me put it that way. The second thing is, because we're new at this, I'm sure there's an error in here, but that error can really help or hurt the district. And I would not want to lay off staff, for example, because we're funding something when we turned out our calculation at first cut wasn't as good as it should have been. So this is a huge financial shift of the district, but it's not detectable on the radar. And so how to approach it. So that's my overall suggestion. I want to open it up for comments, but I appreciate bringing it up to us, and I think it was a great suggestion, and I think it actually requires quite a bit of work on everyone to make it happen in the right way, but that's where we are.
Yeah, I think that when you brought the bar graphs in and you kind of stacked them, it gave a very good graphical representation of just the sheer volume of an almost $20 million target for reserves, and real a designation for what those reserves are for, but no real guidance on how those reserves could be used. I think that there's some very specific guidelines for creating those reserves. I think that the necessity for a lot of those different reserve accounts is important, but I'm not 100% sure that there's not a much better way for us, and a better policy and a better way for us to designate reserves. And I just know that along with putting $1 million away for the water department every year for replacing pipes, $1 million a year we put away for the sewer department to replace pipes, and then try to put away $20 million in reserves besides that, the ratepayers aren't going to, they won't stand for that.
So, but I think what it will do is give us a clear picture where we are financially. Because the whole theory of this was we were setting aside what it really cost us. And if you don't have a sewer pipe breakdown on our current books, it shows nothing. But we know if we don't maintain them, we will have it. So the idea was to what are our true costs on an annualized basis. And I agree with you. We need to review this at least for a second shot at it, and maybe even a third or fourth.
Right, and I think that one of the things in here is your repair and replacement fund of target of $6 million. I think that's if every pipe in the ground is brand new. But we're coming into the time in our lives where we need to start replacing those pipes. So that's, you know, there's nuance here that definitely needs to be addressed. And I definitely 100% agree with you that the boardroom is probably not the place to make the sausage. We probably need to vet those ideas and then bring them back to the board as very detailed proposals to get the board to approve them. As we were talking the other day, I think that this is an elephant, and if we're going to eat the elephant, we're going to definitely need to do it in small bites, and because we can't, the potential for the complexities, for us to get lost in the complexities are definitely here. If we don't take this in an incremental approach.
And remember, it took us 7 years to get where we are. Well, you know, that's a long time for some of those concepts to have aged, and we haven't gone back and checked or been able to check. So I think this is a great opportunity for us. We've got it. Mary, board member.
Oh, thank you. Saw me leaning in here. I'm really supportive of this going to the audit committee, and I just wonder if you could give me more of an idea of, well, how does the audit committee, who is on the audit committee? And I mean, we have 2 board members, and then staff is there, and then
yeah.
What's that? What does that look like to bring this to the audit
Well,
committee?
first you've got two very suspect members. You have Shell and myself. They currently consist of the audit committee. We, of course, have Colleen there. Well, the general manager has to be there. And, of course, we have Colleen there. What it is a place where you can, a little bit more quietly, talk about these things and go through a large number of issues and problems, and then replow that figure. Is that going to be good enough for the state, good enough for the auditors, good enough for the public, and then come back with our best shot for this board. But hopefully at the end of it, we'll have a lot clearer financial picture, and every board member will be aware of it than right now. That's the goal.
Are we currently able to handle this the way our audit committee is set up? Is that our prerogative? Or do we need some sort of a voting item?
I think we can, try, and if it, what do you think, Colleen? If it becomes too much, then you could get some outside help, because you do have help, right?
Yeah, we do have.
We have an account, we have, aside from the auditors themselves from FEDAC and Brown, we also have a contract for accounting support services with Jackson and Eklund.
Right.
So it's not just the auditors who get to fine tooth comb everything I do, it's also Scott Gordon over at J&E. But like, for instance, one of the things that the capacity fee reserve is designed for increase, for projects that increase the district's capacity. Well, the new wastewater plant increased our capacity by about 30%. So technically, we could have taken 30% of the cost of that plant from the capacity fees reserve. The thing is, that would have taken the capacity fees reserve down to zero, and still not filled that bucket. It was a much larger project than what was encompassed. And we got a loan for virtually the full amount, and we were funded at 90+%. So I didn't actually draw on the capacity fees. And one of the things I realized is that I didn't know how the authorization process worked for drawing on said capacity fees for a project that large. And so those kind of nuances are kind of the conversation that we need to have, where we can craft a policy where that's clear. If it's over this dollar amount, or if it exceeds this parameter, we need a full board approval, or if it's over this dollar amount, we need the general manager's approval. It's not just something that the finance director, if it's under these parameters, the finance director can transfer funds, blah, blah, blah. I mean, things like that. It actually does get kind of weird.
Yeah, and I think that, so for, and just some feedback is when the water and sewer rates, and also the capacity fees are set, each capital line item has a designation of the percentage that is for growth and the percentage that is for that should be covered by a rate. So say that something's a 70-30 split, 70% of it would be covered by rates, and 30% of it would be covered by capacity fees. We apply industry standards to those, and those are already in place, and they're part of the tables that we use when we do the rate studies and we do the capacity fee studies. So I would highly recommend that when we're retiring the debt on the wastewater management facility, that 30% of the debt is financed with capacity fees. Or we're going to get ourselves a foul in future years when we reassess the capacity fees, because it's a 218 process, and we have to remain in compliance and to continue to raise them incrementally. That's got to be reassessed every 5 years.
And then just a little bit to answer Board Member Orsante. I think if we, first of all, have some discretion within the budget to do additional contracting. We run into a situation where that's not enough, and I think that would have to come back to the board for approval. And of course, the board has to weigh out, is it worth the cost of, the more precision you have, the more it costs, let me put it that way, and weigh off what makes sense financially.
And what our plan is, without me knowing as many details as, where everybody's going to show me, the whole idea that John had, which I thought was really good, is that we would have it kind of similar to a mini audit, the forms, and teach everybody kind of how to read those. And so when you do get the audit, you kind of are familiar with how things are set up. And Colleen, you thought that was it's more work, I know, but yeah, she's not looking at it. Yeah, but I think it would be a real good opportunity to learn how to read an audit. And in those audits, it's a lot of really good information. And we wanted to tie the treasurer's report to the audit so we could trace it back. And I think that's a real good step too.
Right, that's one principle that was discussed, is whenever possible, where it makes sense, is how our financial statements tied to the audit.
Yeah.
So that you can read one and say this has to affect the audit this way.
Walk it forward. You could walk it forward, and
right.
then we know that if at the end of the year we kind of have an update, and if there's some big changes, then we'll know, wow, what happened.
Right, and the second thing is with budgeting. If you
get back to the agenda item, please. I don't want to be. We've got quite a bit more stuff.
Yeah,
and I think we've kind of.
Is everyone agreed
off the rails?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll go to the audit committee.
I did have a comment before we go. So to me, the capacity fees are kind of different from these other reserves. So, I mean, it might be good to kind of look at them separately, because we were talking about the other reserves being required, and the capacity fees are just something that we have accrued at this point. So to me, they're...
No, actually, there's a formula for the capacity fees.
No, okay.
Yeah, they're assessed.
Okay.
Right. I think we bored everybody, John.
Yeah, you bored me with submission. I'll just refer to the audit committees. Thank you. Are you awake? Okay, E9, consider approval of Resolution 2019-15, modifying Appendix A of the Board Policy Manual, updating board direction for the McKinneyville Senior Center Board Liaison, page 105.
I make a motion that we accept, I make a motion we accept 2019-15.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there board discussion?
I have a discussion point.
Sure.
Well, let me start by saying, as I understand it, you're off to a great start in the senior center, and that they're really appreciative of having you participate.
It was really fun. I had a really good time with last month.
Yeah,
thank you.
Great relationships there. So I wanted to look at what is required versus what is sort of invited of the board, and sort of remind or go back to when I was appointed to serve as the liaison to the senior center, and if I remember, we had somewhat of a dialogue around the roles of our agency versus a nonprofit, and serving the needs of our community, especially in regards to recreation. We have this great relationship with the senior center, but I wonder if we're editing the language, if we want to consider scaling back what is required of us. And when you have someone like Shell, who is, brings certain qualifications as a liaison, the senior center may very well want to invite more participation. But, for example, I don't have the same set of skills that Shell does. And so there may be, we have to think, what I'm looking at is the future, and this is, language that defines what our relationship is. So the specific language that I'm talking about is that let's see, it's on page 132 of the board packet. And it says, we will appoint a director to serve as the board liaison for the senior center, and the appointed member should attend all MSC executive and regular board meetings. And I know from when I was liaison, the 2 meetings were a lot. And so I would propose to strike the executive. Like I said, that participation might.
I would, we can always change them later. So I would be happy to, since I'm going to be doing this, and then if somebody else is the liaison and doesn't have the time or the desire or isn't have the skill, like you said, that's what I do. Because you were also you were the McKinleyville Senior Advisory Committee, and I know you did a lot for them. Yeah. So you actually did everything.
There were 3 parts, and now there's only 2.
I have enough time to do that, and we can always change it, right, in the future. Yeah, I'm real happy with this. Yeah.
What line is that on in the page? I don't.
Well, what's happening is they canceled the McKinleyville.
No, I know the genocide. I'm just wondering where I just want
Right in the middle of the page. You see those 2 lines on the left side, Dennis?
Yes.
You sort of follow that right in and look for MSC executive is.
And I think our MOU also states that.
It's right after the committee that struck through the
Yeah, we're on the executive and the other, the MOU that we have to share with them. Yeah, so I would think that would be good, yeah. And then my concern too was that I noticed that they are starting the advisory committee back up. So they canceled it for maybe a month, and now like Ryan Center is going to be on it. There's, because I've got the retreat, the executive meeting, and the regular meeting, and they are going to start the advisory committee back up.
Right, so this is, I think this reflects the changes that the senior center has seen, and they have really hit the ground running and are continuing to grow and develop in a lot of different ways. And so it calls into question for me what our role should be as the district in our relationship with the senior center, and not be too entangled. So that was previously an advisory board chaired by us, and so that is canceled. We are no longer going to be chairing an advisory committee for them, but they're choosing to start it up. So
yeah, but they do have the executive and the general, and I'm happy to go. Yeah.
Well, can I maybe make a suggestion that we approve the rest of it, and then we come back with a wording that's a little bit more flexible regarding the senior center?
Can I comment?
Yeah.
So that's why I want to look at it and read it. As it stands right now, John, you will understand this, it doesn't say shall attend, it says should attend. So there's flexibility built right into that language right there.
Yeah, should be.
So I think, that we can go or not go.
And the senior center is getting ready to hire a new executive director, and that person's already been vetted, and I believe that they haven't.
You helped with that. You helped choose that person.
Right.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. Yeah.
Well, no, there's a new one because.
Yeah, she helped with the new one.
Oh, with the new one too? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
she helped. Yeah.
So, when Emily drafted this language, it was as close to what we could see as what was reality, and what we saw as reality right now. My recommendation is that the board approve it, and we can always bring it back and modify it later.
Yeah, if it becomes a little cumbersome.
Yeah. One thing that I do like to remind the board is when I started participating with the senior center, they were about ready to. Rosemary was getting ready to resign, and they had decided to go with the volunteer and things like that. So at that point in time, we were very instrumental in bringing them back to where they are now. So I see it as something that is, you know, part of our commitment to the
Right.
community.
And I don't know how far we'll stay engaged in my vision, which is just a vision. But I don't want to see Fortuna have that beautiful new senior center. I want it here. So, I mean, that just is a vision. Someday, down the road.
Because
But we think we have.
I'm not going to fight about it, especially at this hour of the night. I would just have it end that they're looking at looking research and will appoint a director and then let all the details be worked out on what they do. But if everyone feels we should go with this language, even though it may not be technically correct, that'll be easy to amend in the future. I'm not going to fight it at this hour. So,
Well, how it's written, it matches our MOU for that. We just
yeah, but that's a transitory thing to put it in a board manual.
So do we even need to do anything at all?
Well, I am a vast school, but I have lost that battle several times here at the board.
Oh, no, I mean, I would like to be the liaison.
Yeah, okay.
She's just asking you for advice, Joe.
Yeah, I was just asking, do we even need to change all this? Can we just let it ride how it is?
Well, that's what is the majority sentiment. I'm saying I'm going to go with the majority sentiment. I'd have it much simpler, just that we'd appoint a director in the future, but we're moving forward with what we got, unless I hear something different.
We could table this and do that. I mean, like,
Well, it'd only be this provision. I don't want to table the whole thing.
well, that's what I say.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. Yeah, I mean.
Well, I think I'm going to leave it to the board to make a motion. So, first let me ask, any comments from the public? Hearing none, it's back to the board.
Did you make a motion?
Yeah, I made a motion.
Okay, and is there a second?
I second.
Okay.
Oh, did you second?
I second it.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, I thought it was already, yeah.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Call the roll.
Barzanti?
Yes.
Bird?
Aye.
Couch?
Yes.
Mayo?
Yes.
Corbett?
Yes. Okay, next item, E10. Oh, we already handled the general manager.
Yeah, it's a part of what the senior center language was in, I believe.
Yeah, that's just the attachment.
Yes, so E10, review operations draft budget for water, wastewater, and streetlight funds, FY 2019-20, information only. So we'll call on Colleen and then we'll...
Okay. So this is the usual suspects. We recommend the board review the 1920 draft operating budget for water, wastewater, and streetlights funds. It was developed based on current cost trends and best estimates. Information from the capital improvements draft budget that was previously presented is incorporated where it needs to be. Questions from the directors on any category item on the budget overall are welcome. Finalized budget will be next month's meeting. Okay. I will go straight to the attachment and the weird looking parts of the attachment. So starting with the water fund. Water revenues. Okay. So the first thing is we've started doing the budgets where we're looking at the budget for 1 year versus the proposed budget for the coming year. The only difficulty with that, of course, is that we're not looking at actuals or estimated actuals. We're looking at what was budgeted, and generally that was crystal ball gazing done kind of like a really long time ago. And in this case, the first weird thing I'm going to highlight is the water sales. So the original approved budget for 1819 shows 3.75 million in water sales. The proposed budget for 1920 shows 3.65 million in water sales. Well, why on earth are we doing that? How odd. The answer, of course, is that the water sales for the budget, for 1819's budget, came from the 2013 rate study, the water rate study. And it was the last year of their projections. So those projections were actually developed in 2012. And they were projected out. I used those for the water revenues. When we did a new rate study last year, they reviewed their rates and recalibrated, if you like, and they were looking at actuals. And so their estimated water sales for 1819 were actually much closer to actual, and their projections were based on the actuals that they were seeing in 1718. So, which were actually lower than the projections that they made back in 2012. So that's why. So that's why that looks weird, just to show you. The other thing that looks really weird, and this is the one that gives me heart palpitations just because it does. The single largest change in the expense, in any of the expense categories, aside from water purchase, which is based on Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District and has nothing to do with us. This is their best estimate, and we're using their numbers. But the other one that is large is the other expenses. Always be wary of an account called other expenses. In this case, it's almost $200,000 more than last year. That's weird. Why? And the reason is simply that last year was the first year we implemented GASB 75, the OPEB actuarial calculation and statement of liability. What happened when we did that calculation, or when the auditor did that calculation, this is not a number I pulled out of my ear, the auditor did this, was there was a $203,000 expense, actuarially calculated expense. It's not a real expense, it's not cash out, it was an actuarial calculation. Now, my experience with these actuarial calculation expenses is limited to the pension expenses. And the first year they implemented GASB 68, we had a large actuarially calculated pension expense, and I almost had a heart attack. And then the following year it was less, and then last year it was nothing. They changed the calculations in a way that made GASB happy and PERS happy and everybody was happy, and it ended up showing no actuarially calculated expense. I don't claim to be an expert on how to calculate that stuff because I'm not an actuary, and in this case I'm also not an auditor. So what I reasonably expect is that the OPEB actuarial calculations will change and that the expense will be less. But I don't know that yet because we haven't gone through the second year of implementation. So I put in a $200,000 line item that said actuarially calculated OPEB expense. It's not a real expense, it's not a cash expense, but it's in there because it might show up there.
It will change every year.
It'll change every year until they get the formulas sorted out and everybody's happy. So when you look at this, so here's other expenses were budgeted for $258,000 in 1819. That additional $200,000, $205,000 is part of this $427,000 line item here. But the difference is only $169,000, which means that other expenses actually went down, except for that one line item, if that makes sense. So if that line item doesn't actually calc out and it doesn't come to pass, then we're actually going to be lower. But this is the draft budget. I'm trying to look at the worst case scenario, so I put it in there. I know it looks weird, and anybody want to take a pot shot at that, you're welcome, please.
Well, Colleen, would you say that that's potentially the worst case scenario, so it was your intention to put it in there just so that we can have surprises at the end of the year?
Yeah.
So we'll see how close you are.
Hopefully not very close at all.
Hopefully not close. I would be really happy to be way off on that line item.
You're being good.
I would be much happier.
Doing the worst.
Yeah, because it looks horrible, to have, to have our revenue not increasing large amounts and then our expenses possibly increasing large amounts. It looks bad.
Yeah, and another thing too for the board's interest, the potential for us to come in at a total revenue of $4.12 million or $4.142 million is probably not going to happen. I think we're probably going to be much closer to coming in at somewhere in the neighborhood of a little bit less than the $3.6 million that we've got budgeted for next year. And as Colleen said, the reason for that has a lot to do with a couple of things. And if you look at James's water use graph that he puts in his operations department report, you can see that our water uses from 2013 have not increased very much at all. So our water sales are actually fairly stable from what they were, whatever that was 8 years ago. So when those budget numbers, when that number for 2018-19 was calculated in 2011, it was not, that was the projected rate of increase, and so that didn't happen because the people of McKinleyville took it very seriously when they were told that they needed to start conserving water. Thanks, Dave. Conserving water. Dave's that little angel in my ear that helps me out. So I think so there's some very deceiving numbers in the budget, but they are what they are, and it's the reality. But might not necessarily be representative of what's going to come to fruition.
I did bring the estimated projected actuals for 18-19, and we're expecting to end the fiscal year at just about $4 million even, so maybe $142,000 off. But of that, $213,000 is contributing construction. So we're actually, so $3.8 million is actual, is something that's actually cash in. So it is a little bit lower, but when you're crystal ball gazing in 2011, that's not bad. It's just you're crystal ball gazing in 2011, and years later that doesn't necessarily, as the years go by, the margin of error gets larger. It's just statistical reality.
Well, I think these schedules are very well done. They're really easy to read. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. Love the information there.
This is partly a collaboration. The board has requested before that we compare budgets year over year. I do like the pie graphs because it gives you a chance to look at the proportions and the shifts in proportions year over year, because you can see in this case, like the other expenses slice is a lot larger than the previous year's other expenses slice. So you can see sudden growth or decrease in this. So that's the wastewater is similar. Although we are looking at, we're definitely looking at an increase we don't have the same kind of weird projection issue that we had with the water, but we do have a similar change in the other expenses, and for similar reasons.
And a lot of that might have to do with the fact that we did a rate study to come back to the board so that we had that we had parity to be able to get the funding for the treatment plant. So the numbers in the 1819 column don't have the same effect of age on them that the numbers in the 1819 column had for the water, because those are much more recently projected numbers. So that's why they're more in the ballpark.
The other one that's really large here, the big change, is the depreciation expense, which is more than double, and that has to do with the treatment plant coming online. And that's so the 1.1 million depreciation estimate for 1920 is based on actual calculated depreciation for this year. And since we do straight line depreciation, that's going to be a pretty accurate figure this month. I'm happy about that.
Did you just say about the Park and Rec? Is that a separate budget?
We looked at the Park and Rec's operating budget last month, the draft. So it's in the board minutes, part of the packet. And if you've got questions, bring them by all means. Whenever questions show up, I'm happy to snag them.
Well, then in June, we'll be the final, I mean, these are the drafts, so
right.
We'll approve the final.
Right, they'll get the real thing. Well, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. But yeah, so the yellow slice is the depreciation slice, which is obviously a lot larger, and that shows when we did the budget for 1819, we weren't quite sure when the treatment plant was going to be fully online, which fiscal year it would fall in. But this year we know, and we have a solid number, so I'm happy about that.
And of course, we're carrying the same expense on the other expenses for the same one, so that's significant.
Yeah, that's the red.
And then is the excess over the deficit what we're applying then to the reserve funds?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And then our streetlights budget always looks very small in the numbers, simply because it's not a multi-million-dollar anything, but
it's kicking butt.
It actually is. The important thing here is to notice is this, that bottom line number is finally in the black. We went fiscal year 1819, we will run surplus in the streetlights fund for the first time since I've been here. And fiscal year 1920, we'll run a greater one. And this is, actually, in 1920, we should also see the end of the loan. So we will be able to put aside that money for replacement of poles, replacement of lights, any projects that we need to do. Finally, we'll have that.
And we will see an expense on that next fiscal year. I believe it will be, because is it next year, James? Or is it 2 years? So we'll have to, the photo cells, the thing that makes the light come on and go off with the light, those have about a half of the life expectancy of the actual lamp, and so those will all have to be replaced. And that's 300 and some. They're only 11 or $13 a piece or something like that. They're $9. Oh, you get a better deal than I got. So they're $10. They're $10 a piece, but that's pales in comparison to actually having to go drive out to and use the boom truck and actually replace it.
We're going to be paying a lot for the rental of the boom truck that year.
Yeah.
But we will. The good news is we'll have the funds to do it.
What was the mechanism to turn around the balancing the streetlights and even
we're using an index to increment the streetlight weights.
So it was a couple of things. The tariff well, the consumption of electricity in LEDs as opposed to the high-pressure sodiums, which we went to that technology, is uses about half the electricity. PG&E also, the tariff for LED lights is significantly lower than the high-pressure sodium ones are. So we're basically using about half the electricity that we were before, and we're actually when we do the maintenance plans for the new streetlight zones, we're actually charging the new streetlight zones what it costs to run the streetlight zone now, which wasn't happening before. So all those things are helping.
Any further comments or questions?
I had a question back
Sure.
on the wastewater fund, that under the water and electric expenses went down quite a bit. So is that
Again, that's that new tariff.
that's okay.
That's a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So to give you some background on that, one of the things that one of the parts of the project, the wastewater management facility project, is that we have we use processed water now instead of using domestic water for a lot of the internal things. So the sewer department's not paying the water department quite as much money as they were in the past for that. And also, one of the things that I had done was I tried, and it was a calculated risk, and that was getting us in the A6 tariff. The A6 tariff would have given us a much better payback when we went to solar, but PG&E busted us and made us go to a more appropriate tariff. So though it would have cost us $20,000 or $30,000 a year for electricity for a couple of years, the payback would have been about double that much per year if I could have. But needless to say, the first time that they did an audit on us, they said, "Oh no, you can't have that tariff because you don't have solar." And so, needless to say.
Okay.
What can you say? We swung for the fence.
It's a good thing, costs go down. That's
They did go down significantly.
Hey, you sure brought that up when that guy was here showing us for that skate park today.
Other questions?
Okay. I'm going to move on to E11. Review and consider pasture lease proposal, select and award temporary month-to-month, monthly pasture lease, and authorize general manager to enter monthly lease. Property location MCSD, Fisher Ranch, unimproved parcel APN 508-021-007. And the presentation will be by general manager Orsini.
Thank you, President Corbett. So, sad to say that Mr. Peachy has decided to get married. And not sad that he's getting married, but sad to say that he's moving on. And one of the things that he decided to do when he got married is to confine his hay processing projects closer to home. So. This was the most northern one, and he came to us in February and gave us notice that he no longer wanted to raise crops on our property. So we're here tonight after going out to bid, or going out and putting out a proposal, which is attachment 1, which is a solicitation for a lease proposal. In the process of doing that, I believe, and James can help me with this, was we put the notices of 3Gs, Fernbridge Tractor, on our website, Facebook, and on Craigslist.
Three Fernbridge Tractor locations in Carlotta, Redway, and somewhere else, and then they had ag sales, 3Gs, and then NLP, and then the one they're off of Eureka that turns it in there.
Nielsen's.
Nielsen Feeds.
Nielsen, I forgot
They have
about
2
Nielsen.
locations. They have also opportunity about those locations. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So when we advertised the bid, I probably spent the better part of 3 days on the phone talking to people. We had a significant amount of interest in it. But because the fact that we only allow for fodder crop and not for grazing, and that we're restricted to just hay, there weren't that many people that were interested in it. So ultimately, we ended up with 2 proposals, one from David Collenberg and one from Marcus Martin, both of which are sound proposals. I've met with David Collenberg on the property. I also talked to Marcus Martin several times. He came very highly recommended from Marvin Peachy, and David Collenberg. David Collenberg has worked on the ranch since he was. He's actually run tractors and helped crop on the ranch since he was a teenager. So he has a lot of experience down there. I really am not, and I don't have. Let's see what sort of. At this point in time, I think that either one of them would be a good choice. How's that for first statement? So, and what we're doing here is, and we'll cover the rest of it in the next proposal or in the next agenda item. But these guys both want to get out on the ranch and cut the grass now because the longer we go into May, the more, and Dennis will understand this, the more rank the hay will get, and it'll lose its value. So time is of the essence, and these guys need to get out there, get this hay cut, get it dried so that we can start irrigating towards the middle of this month also. So that it's not only will the hay have value, but we need to get the hay cut before we can actually start irrigating out there. So my thought was to enter into a month-to-month with whoever it is that the board wants to offer the lease to, and then give us a couple of months to be able to negotiate, and we'll talk about that in the next agenda item. And so basically, just to get one of these guys on a month-to-month, I've talked to both, and they're both more than willing to entertain this arrangement.
Okay.
So my staff recommendation is that the board review the information provided, take public comment, and award the month-to-month lease to the proposal of their choice, and authorize the general manager to enter into a month-to-month agreement attachment with that person. Oh, and just for the board's information, is the month-to-month has been reviewed by district council.
Board member questions, comments?
So if they're both equally suitable renters, then what's the difference in the way they've proposed the amount? So Collenberg is $1,500 per month, and it looks like Martin went into a little more detail with the month-to-month versus moving into rent adjustment. Should we assume that they're going to be paying the same amount?
I would believe that I would expect that we can hold them to their original proposal, and that there would be an escalator. I think the reason why Martin, his proposal is in so much more details because he requested that part of the lease agreement that we had with Marvin Peachy, and so he basically constructed it to meet to kind of fit with what Marvin did. I would expect that they're both going to take care of the property, and they're going to farm the property because they're going to need it to produce. And it won't produce without them doing the work that's necessary out there. And I see the reason why I see Collenberg's proposals being substantially more per month than Martin is because he intends on putting his equipment at the ranch
and then having equipment specific for that operation, where Mr. Martin will need to move his equipment around because he's going to he's got a more limited amount of equipment, so that equipment will have to be moved from site to site. And Mr. Collenberg asked if he could just leave all of his equipment right there on site. So I'm going to guess that cost in hauling that equipment around with the diesel fuel is probably the difference in the cost of the proposal.
Mr. Mayo.
Okay. So I know both these guys, and they both are good farmers. I am going to make a motion for Mr. Collenberg, and I'm going to explain why. He has the better equipment. He's got the trucks. He's been down there hauling for PG quite a bit during the last several years. He's got two retail hay sales operations, and he also has a ranch, a big hay ranch in Scott Valley.
Yeah, 1,000 acre.
And good equipment. Plus, like the GM said, he was raised right there. They farmed just on the other side of the river. His father was David Collenberg. They got killed in that car wreck. His aunt is Tony Collenberg that has Tony's, and he's so for those types of connections as well. Had it not been for that sort of personal connection, I would still say that given his equipment ability, he would be he'd be able to be on top of the farming maybe a little better than the other gentleman. But the other gentleman is fine too, and I mean, I again say both of them would do a good
So
job.
do you so move?
So personal opinion, I'm going to move that we support Mr. Collenberg on that.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, just because of the money.
I have no basis to make a decision whatsoever, so I'm going to defer to the expertise of the board myself. Any other further comments? Okay, please call the roll.
James, you got something you want to say?
Public comment.
I want you to line up. We may have to go down to 2 minutes. Let the record reflect they all left in protest, so no comment.
Parson?
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Couch?
Yes.
Mayo?
Yes. Yes.
Corbin?
Yes. Okay. Just a sec.
It's on
That would be
177.
12, page 177. Appoint real property negotiation panel, government as authorized by government code, 54,956.8. For Fisher Ranch, APN, 508-021-007, agency negotiation, panel, Greg Orsini, Russell Gans, and designated board person.
You could actually add David Collenberg there. So we can strike designated person awarded monthly lease and put David Collenberg there. It would simplify the.
We'll accept the amendment to the staff report. David, do you have that? Okay. Briefly, staff recommendation.
Briefly. So the lease that you see in front of you now is basically the lease that Mr. Peachy had. It has, and it also has the updated pesticide policy in there. So the First Amendment to the Peachy lease added the pesticide language in there. So I basically cut and pasted that out of Amendment 1 to the lease and put it in and added it to this lease. As I said, as part of the negotiation, this lease will go back to District Council, and it'll be looked at. What I would expect is for us to stick with the lease the way it was written originally, which would be a 5-year term with the opportunity to renew at 3-year juncture. But of course, it always reserves the right for us to be able to terminate the agreement at any point in time for non-compliance, and which is going to be very important because we don't have any history with Mr. Gallenberg up to this point as far as that we had with Mr. Peachy. So we'll definitely there's plenty of things in the lease that will allow us to be able to assess his performance. And what I would propose is that staff recommend that the board review the information provided, discuss, take public comment, and authorize the general manager and the district general counsel to negotiate a long-term lease and lease agreement with David Gallenberg. At that time, the lease will be brought back to the board for approval.
I'd like to move item E12.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, comments, questions?
The one comment I have, well, two, okay, section 3.2.3, do we still have 2 hay barns and milk barns? I know one barn came down, so I'm just trying to keep our documents fresh. It's on page 182.
Okay, yeah, that'll have to be, so let's see, lease is only to store those pieces we can light equipment to be stored within the 2 hay barns. Yeah, that will be 1 hay barn.
And then my other question to staff is the language around the ability for the leasee to, grow whatever mix of grasses or corn. And my concern is born out of the Mr. Peachy's crop of corn that was planted late, and then
Well, it wasn't planted late. It was planted on time. It flooded.
so the ending condition of the pasture after experiencing the corn planting, and is there any language that you would want to include in here that helps protect the district's asset, in this case the topsoil, staying on the property that you want to add? I realize it does say that, like, harvesting, lesser may advise the lessee when the premises must be harvested, but I just wanted to put it out there to staff if you feel there's a need for language in there that helps protect the management of the property to maintain the topsoil.
Yeah, we thought we had it figured out the year before last, and the same thing would have actually happened this year. So it'd be, it might be worthwhile to just prohibit the cultivation of corn on in the lower areas. That way, the grass, of course, would be there, and it would be established well before the rainy season.
Or a buffer planting between say if they wanted to do corn, between the corn and the drainage ditch, and that way the topsoil would be have less chance of running off drainage.
I think a discussion about that's probably fine. Problem with that scenario is it's pretty intensive to put corn in, and you don't want to put in, go all the trouble of your equipment to put a little bit of corn in.
Yeah, you want to
it just doesn't work. So so there's a lot of that, and these acts of God are acts of God. So, but But when they did grow the corn, and it was good, I mean, it was pretty good. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty significant.
Yeah, and great uptake for us.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, maybe it's something that just staff can manage through communication with the lessee. I just wanted to bring it up.
And you know what, and it might be moved with him. He might have that.
He might not want to grow corn. He's a hay guy.
So we can.
He is a hay guy for sure. Yeah.
And I think Mr. Peachy was more. He was more experimental because of the fact that the ranch was so far to the north, and he was maximizing his dollars. You're seeing the top that. You know, he actually grew quinoa for seed crop on the hillsides and things too. So,
and I was happy about that because that's quinoa that I was involved in producing that productive seed here 20 years ago. We had the 5-acre pieces up there in the Forest Service. We grew that quinoa for years and years and years until we got a seed crop, and then that we grow here.
And that's what he produced that for seed.
Yeah. And that was.
Okay, let's get this. Is this going to be a motion to amend, or are we going to just take it up on staff vote?
I don't feel the need to move to amend.
But your point is well taken. The impact of the corn in the furrowed land with the flooding was definitely had a significant impact. So,
okay. So we'll take it that the staff and the GM will vet that out with the
right.
Yeah.
Sub-directed by the chair. Okay.
Just process-wise, that doesn't give you leeway to be able to change the language, does it? If you were to feel that was necessary?
Well, I think that so the lease is going to come back to the board for approval.
Okay.
That's So because because at first I thought about the board could just authorize me to enter into a lease, but I don't know until we start negotiating what that's going to look like, and I'm very uncomfortable with not bringing the final version of the lease back because I believe that it's going to look different than this.
Is he going to be able to get out there and cut?
Yeah, because we're going to enter into a month-to-month.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to use the month-to-month lease and get them established, and then we'll work on the.
We'll work out there this weekend cutting.
I'm going to call him in the morning.
Okay. Any further discussion? Do we have motions and seconds?
Yes.
I think we do. Okay, let's call the roll. I'm sorry.
Public comment?
Well, I'll call public comment, but the record should indicate there's no public.
Marsanti.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Couch.
Yes.
Vale. Yes. Corbett.
Yes.
Yay.
So the next item, I think, is staff reports, right? Point 2A, support services.
No, actually, there's the committee reports.
What am I missing?
Committee reports.
All of us.
Oh. We certainly wouldn't want to shortchange the board. Okay. Recreational Advisory Committee.
Well, we met, and we have an excellent summary of it in there, so I won't elaborate anymore.
No, I work for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Area Fund.
Oh, I attended the first meeting where the area fund made their decision about funding, but then I missed the meeting where they awarded the funds to the different entities. But everyone who applied was awarded funds. And from the picture, it looks like it was a happy occasion. So really happy to be a part of that, see that the McKinleyville Area Fund funds such a diverse group of interests in the community.
Do they determine the amount they're going to fund based upon a recommendation from HAP, or do you know what their funding is as a percent of net assets?
I don't think I can fully answer your question. I can tell you that this is, John Cole said, reported at the RAC meeting, that this was the first year in several years that the funds that they gave away were in excess of what they earned based on their investments with HAF. So the need in the community was larger than it has been in the past, and they agreed to dip into their principal. Is that the right term?
That sounds right.
To pay for their grants this year.
I don't want to waste our time, but where are they getting that percentage to do? Is it 4.5%?
I don't know.
Okay, because that comes from half. Anyway, one of these days ask them. Okay, Redwood Region Economic Development, Mayo Barsante.
We had a meeting, and two things. One, the fire and light, we really foreclosed on it, but we actually did foreclose on fire and light. They're out. We're looking really hard to try to find somebody that would do some variation on the theme and keeping that facility going, as we're all learning that the recycling industry and everything is in the shitter, and that's part of their problem. The other part of their problem is, as a product, it's kind of maxed itself out. They didn't have.
Maybe if the owners would have stuck around and did their business.
Well, yeah, there's that too. The product wasn't able to be microwaved, wasn't microwavable, and they didn't make any other things like artsy-fartsy stuff, or So it was popular but limited, and it's kind of run its course too. So the equipment is very expensive and very good equipment, so they're hoping to do something, but probably it's all just going to get auctioned off. That's probably what's going to happen. The other thing we did was they did a resolution supporting the crab fishermen and this horrible crab closure, and so we appreciate that. And I just wanted to mention too on that I think that's the appropriate venue for our participation in those types of things, although it's very near and dear to my heart, and I think very relevant, socially timely. It's not the kind of resolution that should come to this board. I love my crab fishermen and think what happened to us is terrible, but that's not what we do.
Right.
So, but at REDEC it is, and so I appreciate you doing that.
Super quick question. Didn't Fish and Game already stipulate to what it was in their court case, and so from a citizen's view, the whole public hearing process is a little bit of a sham?
It wasn't a little bit of a sham, it was a complete sham.
Right, because it already agreed to settle in
the
court case.
PSCA, and I always say it wrong.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to check.
They step up and pretend that they represent fishermen, and they don't.
And then I just wanted to say on the fire and light, it's gone through 3 investors, 100%, so it isn't the first time they've...
But it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 4%, baby. It's done.
McKinneyville, are you done?
I am, thank you.
McKinneyville Senior Center, Board Liaison.
I had a real busy month. I met with Kendra for lunch, and she filled me in. And then I went to the executive meeting and got acquainted with everybody. And then I attended a going away lunch for Kendra. And then I went to the general meeting and met the new director. And then my husband and I last Saturday, we're having so much fun. My husband and I last Saturday, they had a lasagna and line dancing. And we helped with that. We served and
In that
cleaned
order?
up. Yeah.
Oh,
We just were busy, and it was real fun. I met lots of nice
Well,
ladies.
Dennis and I might help with the lasagna section next
Oh, it was so
time.
good. It was the best lasagna ever. So, yeah. So it was really fun. So that was nice.
I wish I would have been in Reno. I would have went to that.
Well, the people doing the line dancing were real good at it. I mean, I was going to do it, but there's no way I could have done it because they were real good. It was fun.
All right, audit committee.
Oh, you want to? We pretty much said it. We all met with Greg and Colleen, John and I and Greg and Colleen met. And I'm working with Colleen this Friday. She's going to kind of show me what's going on, the her system, and so it will kind of, and she sent me some trial balances, which I probably don't know what they are, but you know, we're all geeked out about it, so it's kind of fun. Yeah, so we're working on that, and like I said, we're trying to make it so that there's treasurer's reports that will be able to follow the audit. So, and then we'll teach everybody how to do that, and it'll be probably bore you to death, like that. And they also went over the pension liabilities and the OPEB. And I still have to do some more research on the health, the OPEB for that. And that's about it.
All right. Employee negotiations.
We have done anything? So.
Nothing to report? Okay, Water Task Force, Bert.
Did not meet. I got an invitation for filling out a poll for a meeting, but I haven't heard about a meeting. Have you?
I have not
Okay.
either.
Okay.
Just filling it out.
Ad hoc, no drugs and toxics.
Did not meet.
McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee.
At the meeting, we have 2 new MCMAC members. Maya Conrad and Bonnie Oliver joined the MCMAC, or we're appointed to the MCMAC. The meeting was county presentation on housing element, taking input, just sort of generally taking input. There wasn't a MCMAC formal input crafted. And then the announcement of a county meeting to collect input on greenhouse gas reduction effort. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's going to be rescheduled because it's conflicted.
It was going to be conflicting with our next MCMAC meeting, so they rescheduled it. That's super. And the next meeting, I believe, well, at least it was discussed. Of course, I haven't seen an agenda yet, but we'll be focused on policies and Brown Act policies, conduct, and get some clarity on how that committee operates.
Okay. And with the slew of emails we got with everybody replied to today, we probably need to have some brown factoring.
Yeah, and we need to figure out how we communicate because we don't have a general manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I saw suggested that would be a good orientation to have on the Brown Act.
Yeah.
Okay, Cornerstone Committee.
Well, we have actually been pretty busy because we have this event coming up Saturday. It's Vines by the Sea. So right out here we will have a beer and wine fest. And we're going to need to probably next meeting, is it Meredith? Or what's the lady's name? Talia. We probably want to give her a letter of appreciation because I think she has been the force behind organizing it. And it would be a good thing to, support our local brewery who has really been helping us do that event. So everybody come out Saturday.
Weather's going to be great. We're ordering no wind. It's going to be fabulous.
I was hoping you'd talk about the beer.
And your general manager will be a guest pourer, so.
There's 20 breweries and wineries, which is 5 more than we had last year.
Wow. Are there any kombucha distributors coming?
There is a kombucha.
No, good.
Actually, I think so. I might be wrong.
Oh, and I forgot one thing at the general meeting. They didn't recognize Leslie because she had new glasses. They said, "Who is that?" Yeah, when we at the senior. I saw her. They wondered who she was.
Someone makes a bad comment, you put on the glasses, and it's us.
She looked cute in them.
Okay. Groundwater Sustainability Committee, nothing to report. Humboldt Local Agency Formation Commission.
No, we did not.
Okay. Staff report, support services.
Two brief updates. The new consolidated meter reading and utility billing system was billed regularly for April. Right? It will be billed regularly for May. Late charges and block notices for non-payment. We're working up a lock list now, and that meets the 60-day requirement of SB 998. And hopefully we are also on for going on with plain paper billing for mobile billing. So we're reading now, and we'll be generating the bills next week, and hopefully they'll come out in plain paper format. So if you see a regular size envelope that has a bright stamp that says utility bill, please don't throw it away. It's not junk.
Because the next one you get will be lockless.
Yeah.
Will it be the same kind of an envelope? It might get thrown away.
There will in fact be a return envelope inside. The other small brief I want to give the board is we successfully sold surplus phones from our old NEC phone system via a website service called govdeals.com.
You successfully sold what?
We had an NEC phone system.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and the server for it was shorting out, and there was several weeks where we had no voicemail, and it was very weird, and so we surplused that and fixed the problem. But then we had all these phones that were perfectly good phones, and they plug into any functioning NEC server. So we put them on govdeals.com, which the site's set up like eBay or any other auction site, but it is specifically for government agencies to advertise and sell and auction off surplus, their surplus. So just as with a regular in-person government auction, anyone can bid on the items listed. They have some very weird stuff occasionally, just so you know, because it's not just special districts or cities or counties, it's also educational institutions and and various police forces.
Fire trucks, medical equipment.
Oh, fire trucks. Weird things that the police have seized in various activities.
Cool.
Anyone
from Humboldt
can
County.
unless there is some legal reason to restrict the buyer. So sometimes because you have a university selling something, they can only sell to nonprofits or other government entities. Sometimes there's legal restrictions, but not often. Most of the stuff on the site is just open to the
You
public.
have to have a federal firearms license to buy the guns that they sell.
Yes.
But, I mean, if I wanted some, you could buy it through the district for me?
No. But you could go online yourself and buy
What's the
it.
value of being on the damn
Grand jury meets to talk about democide.
That's the benefit here. And by the way, I hate your new phone system.
Oh, no, sorry.
I hate it.
Well, now that we've gotten into hate speech, I think we have to be careful there.
Anyway, that's all I had for the staff report.
Okay. Operations, James Henry.
Well, I was going to talk about our new phone system, but I'm not. This time.
I have a question. The chart on water usage and how we mentioned earlier that there really hasn't been an increase in usage, people recycling and whatnot. Is there any, we're mandated to have this report in here? Is that right?
You are not
Required?
mandated. The state's mandated to get that report.
Yes.
The board requested to see this report.
And is there any requirement that is associated with this besides delivering the report? That the state.
It goes to the state.
You're supposed to try to meet the goal that you reported.
Yeah.
Well, so if you're talking about the water used for the gallons per capita day, like right now we're not under mandate on that. We're not in the drought, but their target was to try to get under 50 gallons per capita day.
Oh, okay.
So you can see, and I put that on the right where we bounce around at. We're not in drought right now, so we're not mandated at this moment to be at 50. We are, and our percentage of reduction isn't mandated right now, but we're still reporting it monthly. It's something they're still watching, but right now we're not.
Right.
But we're still reporting this monthly.
Yeah,
And also, I think there's a little wisdom, if there's a drought again, the state's it's not in a dusty thing on the shelf, it's ready to go out.
Right.
And then, so we got a whole system, and we don't have to restart up, and we can show our history.
And the 55 gallons per is right there ready. I mean, that will, drought or no drought, that will be coming our way within the next 2 years.
Right, and so right now the state's actually doing the irrigation assessments where they're using satellite imagery to be able to calculate out, and we're actually in that pilot study with the state when they take the satellite imagery of McKinleyville and then analyze our acreages of irrigation to give us our allotment back related to what our gallons per capita per day will be able to be adjusted to because of that irrigation.
So if I'm out there a little while with the hose, I gotta be, you discover it by satellite.
Hope the cows all take a pee that day.
What they're doing now is still collecting the data to build the trend. So I'm assuming when this comes back, you won't be comparing 2013 anymore. You're going to be comparing 2020 against 2018 to meet those goals. Right. The district battled with all this time was in 13 we did a rate increase, and then everybody used less water, so we were trying to beat that goal the whole time. Like, oh my goodness, and what helped us is then we did another rate increase, and then it helped us, that helped people conserve even if they didn't want to conserve. So they're just still building the data. We've still got to report it by the 10th of every month.
Right. And we've far outreached our 20% by 2020, which was the goal from the Urban Water Management Plan. But when we went into the drought, of course, that number was no longer, they wanted more than that. So at some point, they'll probably go back to that, so something along those lines, 20%.
Yeah, Director Wheeler requested this, which is why I ended up going in here. So I keep bringing it in for you guys to see.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to look at.
Okay.
And of course, it's a moving target all the time.
I had a comment too to that. Today is the same. Don't take water from Humboldt Bay from 12 to 6 because they want to conserve electricity and PG&E, asked them to not take. So they had a nice letter and mentioned that McKinleyville doesn't have to take water to 7:30. So.
Yeah,
they want to hear that last.
So on peak times.
It's what we call peak time.
No, I know, but I just couldn't hear how you said that so fast. I couldn't hear you.
So anyway, they were commending McKinleyville.
Oh, commending.
We don't have to take water right at 6.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't hear that.
McKinleyville waits till 7:30 to take
and they asked us when we wanted to take water. We told them that we could take water as late as they wanted. They told us the 7:30 number. What you're going to see in the very near future is the peak time shifting.
Yeah.
And what we'll end up seeing is right now peak goes from partial peak is from 9 until 12, and then from 12 until 6 is on peak, and then from 6 until 9 is partial peak again. And what you're going to see is peak is going to start shifting around the clock because of the production of solar powered electricity. What's happening is the state's it's basically in a glut of electricity now from that peak time from like 11 until 4 when the sun's making the most electricity. They really don't need to be on. They don't need to worry about the brownouts and the blackouts at that point in time. The issue is going to be from 4 until 9 is where the issue is going to be. So in the next few years, we're going to see that the peak is going to actually shift significantly. So that'll I think that because of our pumps and when we build that new tank, I believe that we should be okay with being able to do that.
They did the same to residential customers. It's now the peak is 8 o'clock when you're.
Yeah, and they'll do the same thing to commercial customers.
Okay, any further comments, questions? Parks and Recreation.
We're doing a lot of things and nothing coming back.
I'd just like to comment. So it looks like the school district is doing more programs, and so that's a continually changing relationship. And I want to thank you for reaching out and doing surveys and just continuing to look at that situation creatively, see what the needs are in our community.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? General Manager.
I think that, something that's on the radar, it's not in my report, but we got a survey today. The county in their continual efforts to try to get out of trouble with the federal ADA requirements are now going to have to improve all the curb ramps on Central Avenue. And the impact on McKinleyville Community Services District is that there won't be any funding for any of the modifications to our infrastructure that have to be changed. So we do not know what that impact is going to be to us related to our meter boxes, telephone poles, fire hydrants, and things like that. But I've been informed today that the county will not have funds available to help us make those modifications.
So the county's going to come in and do their modifications, but if they affect the district infrastructure, they have no funding to help us.
Correct.
Handle.
What'll happen is then at that point in time we'll have the opportunity to either do it in-house, which will give us a significant savings of we won't have to pay prevailing wage, or we'll have to pay the contractor that's going to do the curb and gutter work for the county, and we would have to pay them prevailing wage.
This isn't the first time the county's done this. As an example, the school road project cost us a bundle that they
$200K.
Well, and the funny part about it, and it's not funny, is I was talking to the project manager today, and I asked her where they were at in design, because we just found out about this a couple of days ago. The letter ended up sitting and sat for a half a month before it was brought to mine and James's attention. And but anyway, when I called and talked to them today, they're somewhere between 35 and 65% design, and they've not contacted us to find out what of our infrastructure is going to be impacted. And so it's kind of standard operating procedure for the county. It's typical. I've not talked to Tom Matson, Public Works yet. Like I said, I just found out about this. When did we talk about it today? Today, so I've not had a chance to really delve into it very deep to find out what's going on. But James and I probably in the next couple of days take a little ride up and down Central Avenue to their telephone poles, because that's going to be the light poles are going to be the most expensive part of that, because we're looking at $1,000 per pole to move poles. So, and I would think that poles and fire hydrants will probably be the most expensive.
Then we just went through upgrading these damn fire hydrants.
Well, this will be having them. Maybe we'll have to move some of them. I don't know. Relocate them. Yeah. That's $2,000 or $3,000 per fire hydrant to move them. Yeah. The poles are about $1,500 to $2,000 a piece to move them.
Well, on that cheery note, keep telling Tom. I think he's our friend overall.
Oh yeah.
And
every so often, about every year and a half or 2 years, I have to call him and remind him that our phone number is 839-3251. Give us a call when stuff like this is going on.
I think part of the problem too is with the growth of McMack. It's like a lot of public works is taking place there. But they can't forget that we're the ones that pay the bills.
They didn't bring it up. They didn't bring it up at the feedback.
Yeah.
No, I mean, so they just don't give.
Right, but I think it gets confusing with them. We got to keep counting on them. They're still here. We still pay the bills. We're critical.
No, I agree with you on the second half of the thing. They're not.
And I'll be in touch. I'll be in touch with
with David Hall from Humboldt Community, because they just finished their part of it over there, so.
Yeah. Well, that
Okay.
might be-
Anything else?
That's it.
President's report. I'll state this and then I'll give a qualifier before you hang me in the morning. But I did make a motion that the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board support the concept of clean water is the basic right of all human beings, and pointed out we spend billions in pollution control in California, and we still got 23% of the people get terrible water. That's the problem. However, Dennis, before you have a stroke,
I'm just trying to do the math here. 23%, I don't believe.
But the resolution copied the state board resolution, except in one respect. We adopted the portion to be funded out of the bond funds. We did not adopt the portion to be funded out of a water tax.
You should have supported SB 699, which is the state revenue trust. Is what
It was pulling teeth to
I understand.
halfway support the
Well, I'm going to bring that up, John, so I'll go ahead and say
on their
say
statewide
that.
policy. Second thing is,
While you're just on that one, it'll say the Safe Drinking Water Trust made it through the second Senate policy round Monday, SB 699, so that's good, and that's the Safe Drinking Water Trust, which is the process that we're going through to provide that. So anyway, thank you, so that's something I don't have to talk about.
but anyway, this was out of existing bond funds, not out as a funding source, limited to that only. Second thing is, we have the McMack very involved in planning, and I think that's going to continue for a while. I'm very worried that we're losing out on possibly getting an expansion of the police, and so I'm thinking of a 2x2 of this board. and select someone, and we go meet with the sheriff. We tell him we're not trying to duplicate his great efforts that he's doing with the McMack, but we wanted to find out the status of the project and what we can do to encourage it in McKinleyville. And part of the problem is now we've gone to 2 fundings of the law enforcement funds, and we haven't gotten anything for that project. So I'm very worried if we don't keep moving, we're going to lose it.
Using Measure Z to expand the law enforcement facility.
So I just think it would be good, not crowding, not duplicating the McMack, but that we independently just assert that we have an interest in it and we want to promote it, and just see where the conversation goes. Because I think, and I might be wrong, but it looks to me like the McMacks took a huge bite of planning, and so the whole police thing has sort of been lost. And so I want to make sure that it isn't lost, and the funding lens keeps getting tighter and tighter, adverse to it. And so would like to have a board initiative from the president and a board member for a 2x2, solely with the sheriff, not like a 2x2 with the supervisors and all that, just to make sure that we've done what we reasonably can do to keep that project alive, and let the sheriff know he's not forgotten, and let him know that support is available. So that's my second.
I support that. Are you going to make that a formal? I would be willing to participate as the McMack representative if you wanted to call.
Well, let me think on that. I don't want to commit to that here. Warren just wanted that I'm going to make some kind of decision, go and do it with the board. We need to think through for the future other combinations for the similar issues, with making sure we're not elbowing the McMack, but making sure we're invited to the party when it's our interest. So
And to
thank
be-
you for offering that.
Yeah, to be clear, the interest is in the facility here in this campus, and that's what
Right.
you're wanting to make sure that effort isn't lost.
Right. I'm really just talking bricks and mortar.
Okay.
Okay, that's all. Comments?
A couple,
Yeah.
First of all, whoever told you 23% is crazy. It's about 3% of the population. So,
Without fighting about the percent, I was more concerned with funding and not supporting.
no, and
Yeah.
I can support that concept. Funny, that was part of a package that we included.
Right, and we didn't have the percent in the resolution. The state board had
That's
that.
really, really good, John, because we can use that in our negotiations to go forward. That's it. Anyway, two quick things. Just want to let everybody know that I've been told you last meeting, I've been working with the Van Jones group on step 1, which was to reduce prison terms, et cetera. And we're working now on step 2, which step 1 is still going, but step 2 is providing retraining and reentry services and that kind of stuff. So I'm really tickled to be a part of that. And we're working to get him here again at HSU. I don't know whether we're going to get it done this year, but early in the spring, if not later this summer, earlier this spring. So it's good. That's fun and exciting and good as well. But there's one thing I want to bring up for us to consider and have the GM maybe bring it back. As these cases settle, there's significant problems with social media and public officials. There's several lawsuits going on in California right now, and of course the president has a big lawsuit going on relative to that, and I think there's like 7 cases in California right now. So let's pull that up here real quick. Bear with me just a heartbeat, guys. I'm sorry. Right here. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. That's the general part. I was going to read to you what the 4 main legal points were of it, and it's basically going to be pulled out of our ability to decide whatever the court decisions are. Our Facebook pages, our Twitters, our all of our social media accounts. Somebody else is going to determine that. So it's something that I think, as it happened, it'd be nice to, have us have a discussion about it on the board level. It's not. I don't know how time sensitive it is. I just wanted to bring it up.
It's a worldwide problem, and everyone thinks there ought to be censorship to then regards to censors. That's the whole issue.
Well,
and whether that be done privately.
But as elected officials, they're going. It's specifically about elected officials.
Yeah.
Whatever the public gets to do is one thing, but all of the things that we do on our, we think our Twitter's safe or whatever, but if the court comes down with a decision or whatever, then
there's a pretty significant. This has the potential to have a pretty significant impact on the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Right.
And who decides on
both ways? Always it's decided actually.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up as something to keep our eyes out open for.
Well, I think it's a big issue.
Zuckerberg's actually gone and said that he thinks that the government should be controlling what happens on.
Okay. Any further comments or questions?
I have a comment. So I met yesterday with some students at HSU, Yvonne Everett's students, and she's an NR professor. I've done tours for years and years, but she's doing a planning class this year. So for students, their planning project, their client with Humboldt County Planning Department, and they were looking at doing plans for the town center. So we were going to both meet with them, but Mary wasn't available, so I did. And they kind of mainly looked at traffic type issues. But anyway, they needed to do a presentation of their project, so they're going to do that at the Pop-Up Museum Friday night. So I was about to volunteer one of our rooms, but I said, I can get you a room, but it'll be empty. So,
Yeah, just invite them to one of our meetings, they can meet and...
well, they had to do it before
Yeah, I know.
they're done Friday, so they're graduating this weekend. But anyway.
How long do you think it's going to be? How long? What's the length of the presentation, do you suspect?
Probably 20 minutes.
Could you video it? Because we're not going to be here. We're going to be down at Monterey. It'd be nice to see it, or to preserve it for the board at the board level. That'd be nice.
I hadn't thought of that. I'll try it.
I mean, if that's not
well, then I'd be able to just give us a copy of it, thing.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be nice to watch them do the presentation.
Yeah, that's true.
If that's possible,
Because, it's really interesting. Capstone really alerted us to the pipe issue from HSU, so, and we thought we were pretty on top of it before they presented.
Perhaps we could put it on a thumbmerino and look at it.
Yeah.
All right, anything else?